One when Luca proved he was the absolute best recruit in combat, his commander tried to break him. Standing before everyone, she claimed he only needed one eye and proceeded to violently rip his right eye out with her bare hands. The other cadets panicked. Luca stayed calm. He stared right back. He knew the Empire would never discard a soldier this valuable. Soldier as incredible as him, but to truly understand how he ended up here, everything must go back. The chaos first erupted when Earth fell, consumed entirely by endless resource wars and ultimately wiped out by an unknown alien race, the surviving. Humans wandered the freezing void of space for centuries until they discovered Novus, their new home planet. A world mirroring their lost home, but peace was a lie. Three major powers emerged and aggressively carved up this world in an endless new war, the Bellato Federation. A massive, chaotic melting pot of various alien species, the holy alliance of Korra fanatics. Wielding force magic and mental power, then the Accretia Empire, steel mechanized. Discipline and an absolute belief in their own mechanical supremacy. His name was Luca. He was born in the slums of this empire, a mere commoner in a machine where nobles dictate who lives and who dies, but he made up his mind to be completely different. He turned his body into a weapon, pushing past limits and pain, fully focused on a single dream, joining the Imperial Guard and proving his worth to the Emperor. He was relentless. Every action was for the Empire. On the day of his final trial, he let raw instinct take over, copying the insane moves of highborn nobles who had triple his training, deflecting bullets with his sword and tearing through his enemies in seconds. That brutal display of combat power was exactly what caught the commander's attention, triggering the brutal eye test that violently took away his biological sight. As a reward for surviving such excruciating pain, he received a military cybernetic eye, the price of power. While recovering in the medical bay, he was approached by Cadet 12, a noble prodigy named Ile. Against all expectations, this noble did not treat him like absolute garbage. He offered high-quality painkillers, praised his skills, and even vented about how the Empire was wrought, prioritizing noble blood over real combat talent. A noble wanting to befriend a commoner and cheering for his success, Luca replied coldly, stating he would soon surpass him, but deep down a genuine bond of mutual respect formed. 2 years passed. His new cybernetic eye guaranteed perfect, lethal shots during their very first deployment on a real battle mission. The commander's order was absolute: destroy an illegal Korra outpost and take 0 prisoners. But when they arrived, the illusion of their sacred imperial cause crumbled entirely to ashes. There was no army or military base, just a simple village in the middle of the chaos. The rising flames and echoing screams, he found his target, a child cornered against a wall. Trembling and crying for her mother, the heavy sword weighed on him. For the first time in his life, the Empire's doctrine completely failed him. Luca hesitated, faking an attack. He quietly instructed the girl to play dead, sparing her and breaking the most fundamental rule. Before he could even process his betrayal, absolute hell broke loose. Ile, the elite noble who believed in him, had half his body obliterated by an energy blast. Garita, a strong Korra force user, defended his home with his own blood. Luca charged forward, dodging the wild magic that distorted the very space around him, pushing his body way past its limits until they stood face to face. He drove his sword into the enemy's chest, but he didn't fall. In a final effort, Garita unleashed magic directly at Luca's head, completely shattering his helmet. Only 1 second. He could have crushed his skull, but instead he stared under that broken armor. In the heat of battle, that relentless enemy actually hesitated out of sympathy. He saw a kid, but the boy had no mercy, not a single drop. He took advantage of that moment, driving his blade deep into the enemy. It pierced his heart, sealing the victory, but as warm blood pooled around them, and the man fell dead, the fever of war vanished. He survived. But looking at the corpse of a man who showed kindness among the ruins, he finally understood the sheer cruelty of the Empire. he was fighting for. He stood in the wreckage, surrounded by screams of total despair. Chaos was everywhere. Meanwhile, in the Accretia hospital recovery room, Luca floated in the water, staring up while LA asked him about dying. Luca told him to answer that himself, since LA was the near corpse there. He was the one who actually almost kicked the bucket in that fight. LA smirked, proud of his new upgrades, and asked if Luca got anything. Luca replied that he got titanium bones and artificial skin. In a few years, he would have an entirely mechanized body. Then LA brought up the chief. He suspected they knew about the Force. It was likely just a test. The seniors never bothered to help them. They probably thought it was unnecessary. Still, LA found their survival very strange. 2 cadets surviving a direct hit from a Force user was no coincidence. Perhaps the enemy never had any real intention of killing them. This thought left Luca pensive, remembering what Garita had told him back then. He believed sparing his life was a mistake. He was an Imperial soldier. That pathetic mercy was the reason why the Caritas kept getting wiped out. He felt a surge of anger. Suddenly, LA turned to him. He asked why Luca turned a blind eye to that Carita child. LA stared him down and pressed him to answer why. Luca turned away, snapping that LA talked too much and should be quiet. He asked if LA grew a new tongue, hiding his deep guilt. He quietly muttered that it was a slip-up. It would never happen again. Later, an instructor announced they had completed 2 years of training. Now they had to serve as role models for the new recruits, especially Luca and LA, who ranked as the top 2 of their class. The officer in glasses said they could both become centurions one day. They would bring immense glory. He explained how the unit was structured. Every 1,000 guards are divided into 10 smaller units called centuries. Each century is commanded by a chief centurion, once the officer departed. Luca realized that after completing their mechanization, they would join the 10th. Though known as the lowest rank, getting in was crucial for him. It was highly beneficial. Now look at this, training is underway. In the arena, 2 soldiers are sparring. LA prepares his attack. He throws a heavy punch with his newly mechanized arm. But Luca swiftly uses his guard to block the devastating blow. They exchange lightning-fast strikes, continuing their intense and brutal training. Luca notices LA's growth, admitting the noble has become incredibly strong. Then Luca sweeps LA's supporting leg with a swift kick, sending him crashing down. He tumbles forward, seizing the moment. Luca readies a direct, crushing blow. Straight at LA's face, he stops his fist inches away, telling him clearly that this marks 124 straight wins. After their intense session, the 2 sit together, looking up at the stars. LA quietly admits that he really thought he would win this time. Luca just shrugs, saying, "Upgrades aren't everything." Eli, the blonde cadet, watches them and points out that Luca seems stiffer since making his speech about becoming a centurion. Luca agrees, wishing he had more actual experience. Eli asks why he cannot just relax a bit. Luca looks at his companion, stating that, unlike Eli, he has no place to return to, forcing him to surpass his limits. He asks why Eli even wanted to become a guardian. Eli smiles, looking up at the night sky, confessing that he wanted to be an archaeologist and study the ancient arcane civilization. Luca asks why he does not pursue it. Eli explains that the subject is completely banned, and his family would never accept it. Luca calls him spoiled for complaining, pointing out that the starving poor do not even know if they will eat. Eli already expected Luca would say that, explaining he was just sharing a secret with his friend, but Luca gives him a stern warning about those words, as they sound like treason. Getting reported would mean serious trouble. Eli just smirks, pointing out that Luca also keeps a secret. Luca replies he only hesitated because his opponent was not a true warrior. Staring intently at Eli, Luca declares his absolute loyalty to the Empire, he considers all of its enemies his own, warning Eli that even cadets are no exception. Eli just smiles, and as he climbs down from the wall, he calls his friend a liar. If that devotion were truly fanatical, Luca would have already tried to kill him. Walking away, Eli tells him to stop being so hard on himself. Annoyed, Luca mutters that the idiot is going to get himself killed. Fast forward a year, and things get wild in an uninhabited neutral arcane zone where soldiers are conducting a quiet reconnaissance mission. Eli presses his hand against a wall, excitedly exclaiming that the wall emits raw energy and is millions of years old. With sparkling eyes, Eli looks back at Luca, asking if this is not cool, thinking civilizations explored stars before humans even existed. Worried, Luca realizes that even after his warning, Eli has no hesitation crossing the line. Remembering their mission, Luca tells Eli to be careful since they must fight if any enemies show up. But Eli is too excited, saying some Imperial guard will save them anyway. Luca gets a bad feeling. Suddenly, someone approaches, saying the present exists because of the past. Ancient records might foresee the future, so history makes perfect sense. It is Claude. Ramon, another noble cadet, with white hair and red eyes. Claude asks if Luca is dating anyone. Luca immediately takes a combat stance. Would consider you a threat if you came any closer. Claude just tells him to calm down, explaining that he only wanted to introduce him to his sister since he would probably become her superior. Claude then asks Luca to think about the offer. Eli laughs, teasing Luca about his popularity, but Luca sharply tells him to shut up. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake. The leader quickly orders a battle formation, declaring he and Claude will take the front while Eli's squad provides backup. Noticing a strange light among the trees, Luca tries to find the source. A dark silhouette stands completely still, a glowing cube floating right above its head. Luca's eyes widen in absolute horror as he recognizes the terrifying shadow. It is a quarry paladin clad in polished silver armor. Sensing them nearby, the paladin turns his gaze. Luca and Claude, the two young trainees, panic as their cover is completely blown. Raising one arm, the paladin summons a lethal spear crackling with raw energy, pointing it straight at the squad. Seeing that overwhelming power, Luca desperately screams for Claude to run, but the knight moves first, launching his spear at terrifying speed. Luca cannot even react. He watches in pure horror as Claude takes the devastating blow head-on. Thrown backward, Claude's body bursts in a crimson mist. Shattered by the sheer brutality, Luca screams out his friend's name. But the paladin just stands there, cold, motionless. The thrown spear is embedded deep in an ancient stone pillar. With a simple stretch of his arm, the knight wraps the weapon in dark energy once more, pulling it straight back into his hand. Still frozen in terror, Luca stares at Claude's mangled, shaking body. A crushing wave of panic washes over him. Recalling their chat, now staring at what little remains of him. The spear had struck with such terrifying, blinding velocity that literally half of Claude's body is just gone. Luca desperately tries to force his mechanical eye to activate, but nothing happens. Looking at the paladin whose hand is still raised, Luca silently begs his system to work. Talk about an absolute nightmare. Weapons path. Suddenly, a hail of bullets rains down upon the knight, who quickly raises a barrier to block them. It is Ile and his squad, charging forward, screaming at Luca to snap out of it and fall back. Keeping their guns locked on the paladin, the blonde leader shouts that it is time to buy some precious seconds, yelling for him to move. Luca knows he is right. Running is suicide. There is only one choice left: unsheathing his crimson blade. Luca braces himself. He remembers the senior officers' instructions. They just have to survive until backup arrives. Now Luca and the monster lock eyes, feel the tension as the clock starts ticking. The paladin launches his weapon again, but Luca barely manages to dodge. Still, it grazes him, completely shearing off half of his helmet. the monster instantly redirects the energy, forcing the spear to loop back around. To strike him from behind, seeing death closing in, Luca realizes he cannot outrun this. A sudden memory flashes through his mind, the terrifying chill of death and Commander Astoria, warning him that the guard rejects. The weak, driven by sheer survival, Luca pivots, raising his blade. In a desperate block, metal clashes against energy as he struggles to hold on. He had to attack now, before the paladin could make another move. The impact shattered the spear's protective force, triggering a massive blast. Thick dust kicked up. Terrified, Alay screamed Luca's name into the smoke. A broken piece of Luca's sword spun wildly, stabbing deep into the dirt. He survived, but Luca was completely disarmed, his hand mangled and bloody. Completely ruined by the spear, now he faced his executioner. Bracing for the next hit, Luca stared as the Holy Knight drew. A cold blue aura flared from his heavy armor. He swung with blinding speed. 3 razor slashes ripped through the air, forming a lethal glowing triangle. It hurtled toward them. Luca threw himself aside, barely dodging the blow. The edge sliced his right arm, but the slash didn't stop there. It tore right through the soldiers behind him. Down they went. Realizing he wasn't the target, Luca screamed for his fallen friend in agony. Seizing the opening, the paladin charged him. Terrified and trapped, Luca refused to just lie down and die here. Screaming in desperate rage, he lunged forward, throwing his entire body at him. The knight raised his blade. Meanwhile, a shadow rushed through the trees. Heavy thrusters roared, launching a savior through the forest. The red-cloaked guard rocketed deeper into the woods, closing the gap instantly. Bursting into the clearing, he saw a disarmed, mangled Luca about to die. Just as the final blow descended, a hand suddenly shot out of nowhere. It clamped onto the paladin's face. Luca froze, completely stunned by this. He blinked, trying to make sense of the giant standing before him. The Imperial Guard had arrived. With a brutal slam, he pinned the knight. Keeping his grip on the helmet, the guard ground him down. He fired up his leg thrusters, dragging the paladin's head along the dirt. Pinning him down with one hand, he drew a massive pistol with the other. Pressing it straight to the knight's back, he fired shot after shot. Still dragging him, the guard spotted a massive stone ancestral pillar ahead. With an explosive toss, he hurled the paladin headfirst right into the rock. The pillar vibrated violently. Gasping for air, Luca watched from the dirt. Surrounded by heavy smoke and dust, he could barely believe he was alive. Through the dark haze, the imposing guard slowly walked over to him. As he stepped closer, Luca recognized the senior. He cried out in relief. They were safe, but behind them, the paladin was already pushing up. Leaning on his blade, the knight rose. Sensing him, the senior turned. A fierce red aura flared as he stared back at his battered opponent. The knight glared through his shattered visor. A new battle was starting. Both warriors braced themselves, ready to tear each other apart without hesitation. Drawing his heavy battle axe, the guard pointed it at the knight. Panting in the dirt, Luca watched this legendary clash begin to unfold. An elite master of the guard against a holy knight of pure force. As they prepared to strike, he could only wonder who would survive. Their weapons collided with an earth-shattering boom, unleashing a blinding white light. They locked eyes in a raw, brutal struggle of strength under heavy skies. The two fighters clashed violently in midair, trading brutal, high-speed blows. Down below, their shockwaves ripped through the forest, triggering a massive, blinding explosion. It was a relentless storm of strikes, with zero breathing room allowed. Watching from the dirt, Luca realized this was what real peak combat looked like. The veteran was moving so fast, his weapon became nothing but a blur. With every passing strike, the boy prayed with all his heart for the guard to win. Landing a heavy hit, the guard fired up his weapon's mechanical propulsion. The sudden boost shattered the paladin's blade into tiny, useless fragments. Capitalizing on the break, the veteran grabbed the knight's helmeted head again. His mechanized arm surged, putting crushing, lethal pressure on the enemy skull. But even with his head being crushed, the paladin channeled his remaining force. He focused that power straight into his finger, calling back his discarded spear. The weapon, still stuck in the dirt behind Luca, began to glow with power. Staring in complete terror, Luca suddenly remembered the fate of Claude. His senior had no clue how incredibly fast and deadly this weapon truly was. The veteran would not react in time, and with one arm already gone, Luca felt helpless. If the guard went down here, it would mean certain death for him too. Desperate to stop it, he watched the spear suddenly launch violently from the dirt. With zero hesitation, he threw his own leg in its path, and it was instantly severed. Screaming in agony, he could only pray his sacrifice was enough to alter its course. The guard finally noticed the rogue weapon, which barely grazed past his shoulder. Since his surprise attack had failed, the desperate paladin grabbed the guard's heavy axe. He pumped pure destructive energy into his grip, trying to shatter the weapon. Sensing the danger, the guard let go and pulled back a massive, heavy fist. While the paladin kept trying to break the axe, the guard swung with full power. He delivered a devastating, skull-shattering punch right into the knight's metal helmet. The sheer impact cratered the earth, causing an absolute nightmare of an explosion. Deep inside the rising smoke, poor Luca lay bleeding out, missing 2 limbs now. Completely paralyzed by pain, he could only stare blindly and wonder who survived. Hearing heavy, metallic footsteps approach, he desperately hoped it was his ally. Keeping his eyes squeezed shut, he heard a familiar voice praise him for his bravery. The voice said they finally put the paladin down, all thanks to his quick sacrifice. The guard asked if his stomach was all right, and Luca gasped that he got grazed earlier. The soldier calmly offered to carry him back to their secure military base. But when he actually looks up, prepare yourselves, because this is pure horror. He was staring at Legion, the legendary mechanical suit made for ultimate battlefield efficiency. It strips away all useless flesh, turning a mortal man into pure steel. Every rookie dreamed of wearing it, but as the metallic arm reached down, Luca froze. The guard had absolutely no head left on his shoulders, yet he was moving. He wondered if there was even a human brain left, or just cold, heartless machinery. Speaking in an eerie, metallic tone, the mindless soldier began patting his empty neck. He kept muttering, asking where his head went, completely unaware of his own decapitation. When the terrifying truth finally hit, he screamed, collapsed, dead. Staring at the metal corpse, Luca wondered if this was the nightmare he wanted to become. Shivering in the dirt, he could only look at his bleeding, broken frame. He lay there, clinging to a thread of hope that rescue would reach him in time. Staring at the shattered armor of the dead guard, Luca wondered if this was his end. Footsteps drew near, and a voice called out, asking if he was still breathing. It was Lei. He had somehow survived the paladin's onslaught and refused to leave his friend behind. Luca gasped out a single question, asking Lei if anyone else had made it. Lei shook his head. They were the only survivors. Everyone else was completely gone. Dropping beside the dead guard, the blonde youth looked over Luca's mangled body with growing dread. Luca choked out that he was dying, then stared up, asking Lei what his next move was. Silence, the sudden question caught Lei completely off guard, freezing him in place. Luca wheezed that the freedom Lei always chased was finally right there, waiting for him. Lei just stared speechless. Straining to look up, Luca whispered his final warning. No freedom here. The Empire would only crush any dream he chased. Shivering with a cold sweat, he urged him to flee to Carrot or Balado instead. Still, Lei said nothing. Luca pressed on, his voice growing weaker. He warned that once the Imperial ships landed, they would both be locked in forever. Lei had to run now. Slowly, Lei pushed himself up, gasping for air as his strength faded. Luca watched his friend slowly turn and walk toward the dark, sprawling tree line. He knew anyone back home would call Lei crazy for abandoning such a wealthy, noble family. Gazing up, Luca realized he never truly understood him, not really. But whenever Lei spoke of his wildest ambitions, his eyes would burn with fierce determination. Deep down, he genuinely hoped Lei would find the freedom he so desperately wanted. His eyes drifted shut, done, then a sudden, sharp pressure. Someone was wrapping a tight cloth around his bleeding, severed arm. He opened his eyes. It was Lei, Luca muttered, asking what the hell this idiot was doing. Lei just smiled, admitting that Luca's dramatic speech actually made him worry he might die. He couldn't just walk away and live peacefully, knowing he left his friend to rot. Luca internally cursed his friend's stupidity as a bright rescue craft broke through the clouds. Weeks later, a recovering Luca sat quietly, deeply engrossed in a futuristic starship comic. Suddenly, Lei leaned over his shoulder, teasingly asking if he was shopping for upgrades. Luca jumped in surprise. Lei pointed directly at the page with a grin. He recommended the F-24 model, praising its lightning-fast adaptation speed. It was way better than Luca's current junk. Luca snapped the book shut, annoyed. Dropping it on the seat, he glared up and warned Lei to stop sneaking up. Lei apologized with a grin, but back home, things had gotten incredibly complicated. Following his medical discharge, multiple Imperial agencies dragged Luca in for brutal questioning. They demanded details on the bloodbath that claimed 3 young cadets and their elite escort. The military officially classified it as a lethal clash with a rogue Carida paladin. But get this, the interrogators were actually hiding something far more sinister. Lei quietly revealed that a mysterious alien relic had been recovered from the ruins. Luca instantly remembered the strange glowing cube hovering near their metal attacker. That artifact was the catalyst. He looked at Lei, asking who possessed it now. Lei whispered that a highly classified recovery squad had already locked down the zone. His expression hardened. If the Alliance refused to yield that site, war was inevitable. If a full-scale conflict erupted between the Empire and the mysterious Caritas faction, then the opportunists in Balada would sweep in and claim all the spoils. That explains why minor, low-stakes skirmishes are already breaking out everywhere. But Luca cuts him off. He has zero interest in political talk. He just wants to follow orders and fight like a true Imperial Guard. Still, Luca cannot forget reporting that decapitated senior officer. The captain dismissed the death as a mere phantom glitch from residual energy. He highly doubts that lie, especially given the captain's tense reaction. Something is definitely off. Luca stands there, lost in heavy thought. Too many secrets remain hidden, but he is no fool. Digging for answers is suicide when headquarters stays completely silent. Meanwhile, deep inside the training grounds sits a surprisingly lavish room. This is the visitor parlor, built for soldiers to see loved ones. Yet Luca never expected to set foot inside this place. Raised in a penniless orphanage, he has no family waiting for him. So who on earth is this striking, white-haired girl waiting before him? This is Lillian Ramons, the elegant sister of his late teammate, Claude. Luca immediately braces himself, assuming she came to demand answers. He was the squad leader, after all, when her brother met his end. But Lillian gently tells him to relax, explaining her family expected this. Serving the Empire always carries a heavy price. She takes a quiet sip. Setting down her cup, Lillian reveals she came here specifically to see him. Apparently, Claude praised Luca constantly as his most brilliant cadet friend. He wanted them to connect. Luca, skeptical, asks if she knows his background. Though he has no status, she simply smiles and says she prefers it that way. Without noble family politics, things are refreshingly simple between them. She seems completely genuine. Then, she softly asks if he is against the idea. Luca narrows his eyes, asking her straight up why she chose him specifically. Lillian smiles, asking if her brother's final wish is not enough. Besides, she gently adds, this arrangement is incredibly beneficial for him. He cannot argue with that logic. Marrying into nobility is a miracle. Luca has clawed and scraped his entire life just to find a shred of success. If a noble marriage fast-tracks his grand ambitions, he should take it. But wait, this feels far too easy. Is it too good to be true? Trusting his gut, he hesitates and rejects her offer. Leaving Lillian stunned, he stands up, bids her farewell, and turns to leave. He always mocked his friend Ely for trying to escape the Empire. Yet now, Luca is throwing away his own golden ticket on a hunch. A noblewoman like Lillian will certainly take this rejection as an insult. He silently prays this move does not ruin his entire career. Suddenly, Lillian closes the distance, grabbing his hand from behind. Her face is bright red as she stammers that she rushed things. She pleads with him, asking if they can start as friends instead. Luca freezes, quickly stammering that he did not mean it like that. Before he can finish, she releases his hand and spins around with a smile. She promises to visit again soon, then runs off. Luca stares at his hand. He realizes this persistent noble girl will be incredibly difficult to shake off sometime later. Inside the training hall, the young cadet Luca faces a ponytail-wearing opponent. Meet Kinyuan, combat coach of the Imperial Guard. With a giant laugh, the veteran admits he never expected the kid to seek him out. Luca wants to learn, but Kinyuan claims there is nothing left to teach him. He has talent that outclasses nearly every other cadet in the program. Simply being the best of the cadets is not his goal. Hearing this bold claim, Kinyuan warns the eager cadet not to rush into danger. He is dangerously strong, but relies on what looks like cheap tricks. Luca has better cybernetics, but lacks the old man's bizarre skills. Clenching his fist, the cadet welcomes the trial. He fully understands that failing here means having absolutely zero chance against a legendary paladin. With a tired sigh, Kinyuan relents and waves the boy forward. The fight is on. Luca surges ahead, launching a straight punch. But Kinyuan effortlessly slaps the heavy strike right aside. He mockingly asks if the boy is just trying to test his shiny new cybernetics. Wind up, Luca knows a retired veteran like this will barely feel average hits. He quickly unleashes a relentless, blinding storm of heavy punches to completely crowd his teacher. Pressing the attack, the cadet leaps forward to seal off any escape. He aims to end this whole spar with one devastating slam. Stretching out, his metal arm reaches for the master. Kinyuan stays still. Luca grabs his sleeve and yanks him down. With the guard dropped, he prepares a final brutal fist, smelling victory. The instructor just stares back with a blank expression. Right as the heavy metal knuckles are about to smash directly into his cheek. Kinyuan's eye flares, and get this, Luca is instantly upside down. It honestly feels as though he has been violently hurled straight into the air. Completely shocked and without a single clue, the boy wonders how he ended up spinning in midair. He quickly plants his hand against the floor to regain his balance. He launches a sharp, upside-down kick at the face. Still on guard, Kinyuan easily snatches his ankle right out of the air. In a split second, the young cadet is thrown again, sent flying far across the hall. He bounces hard off the floor several times before sliding to a stop. Terrified, the boy looks up, completely in shock. Walking over, the master slowly points out his flaws. He got distracted and completely failed to gauge his opponent's actual strength. Staring down at the battered cadet, he asks why he is rushing. Luca tries to piece it together, knowing his fist should have connected with the chin. Yet the instant Kinyuan made contact, his body went numb. It felt as if he had lost total control of his own physical form. His own kinetic energy was somehow redirected right back into him. Shaken by the display, he asks what kind of move that was. Kinyuan simply explains it is his signature defensive counter technique. Scrambling quickly to his feet, the young recruit eagerly begs to learn the move. With a shaking hand, the instructor asks if he really wants this, especially after taking such a brutal beating from a simple demonstration. Comes with a heavy price, as a slow trickle of blood drips from his hand onto the floor. Once again, the two are back in the arena, sitting and facing each other. Kenyuan then asks Luca what exactly he learned from their recent clash. Luca admits he was easily lured in, losing all control of his body. Kenyuan explains that this is the brutal RC combat method. Luca then asks if that style is usually just reserved for bandits, suggesting the military should adopt it. Military standards, but Kenyuan points out three major flaws with the style. Luca asks if the difficulty of learning it is one. Kenyuan nods, praising him. Before Luca guesses, the next issue involves the brain. Kenyuan agrees again, but says the young soldier cannot possibly know the third flaw just yet. Luca insists that he is going to learn it anyway. As Kenyuan stands up, he tells Luca that it is not his choice to make. He then asks if the recruit knows how much money went into his training. Luca stands up, attempting to speak, but Kenyuan instantly cuts him off. The instructor demands an answer, explaining that this style inevitably destroys the mind, and asks if Luca can solemnly swear never to touch it. Staring at Kenyuan's back, Luca knows that Kenyuan will immediately spot any lie. He admits he cannot swear it, but promises to do his absolute best to avoid using it. This makes Kenyuan smile. The teacher turns around, still grinning, placing a firm hand on Luca's shoulder. He says he respects the honesty, which catches the young soldier off guard. Suddenly, the Kenyuan sweeps Luca's legs, sending him crashing to the floor before he can react. Walking to the other side of the ring, Kenyuan warns him to always anticipate an attack. Only then, the master explains, will he truly be prepared for any situation. Luca looks up and starts to ask if that means, but Kenyuan stares him down, cutting him off and telling him to get up quickly. He only likes fast learners. Sometime later, La asks a very exhausted-looking Luca if he is sleeping well, noticing the massive dark circles under his friends' eyes as they walk down a hallway. Luca tells La that he has just been incredibly busy. Privately, Luca reflects on the past month of training, with Kenyuan realizing the instructor has not actually taught him a single thing. Instead, he was told to observe and figure it out on his own. Kenyuan explained that their combat style pushes a user's limits to the absolute maximum, using every single weapon available to create the most efficient move within a matter of seconds. In short, it is pure mind control. Meanwhile, Luca snaps back to reality and asks how La's recent mission went. La replies that it was nothing special. As they continue walking, La notes how easy their tasks have been lately, prompting Luca to suggest the Alliance is being highly cautious. He asks La if that is why the commander has been absent. La mentions hearing some family rumors about the situation, making Luca wonder if it would take a literal rebellion for him to deploy. La confirms this, leaving Luca visibly alarmed, though La admits he doesn't know much besides rumors of a planned uprising. Annoyed, Luca calls the rebels foolish for trying to start a civil war, while they are already fighting the Alliance. La warns that if they make the foolish mistake of ignoring internal rot, they will crumble from within. Hearing that, Luca slams LA against the wall, raising a fist to strike. He growls a direct threat, saying he might overlook LA's wishes for the Empire. But becoming an enemy? Absolutely not. Gasping for air, a terrified LA tries to explain. He claims he passed the guard's test too, but the Empire has to know. This information is too important. He desperately begs Luca to please calm down. Letting him go, Luca warns LA to stop saying such suspicious things right now. He does not want to see his name blacklisted. Smirking, LA tells him to relax. To make peace, LA offers to buy him weekend lunch, but Luca ignores him. Luca coldly snaps that he already has plans. Talking to LA is just irritating him. Still in the hallway, LA teasingly asks if those plans are with some girl. Luca just tells him to get lost. Cut to the city's grim lower sector. Luca and Kenyuan look around. Nostalgia hits them hard. Since joining the military, Luca never planned on coming back to this dump. This slum is a total disaster. Kenyuan watches him with eager excitement. Two guys brawl nearby. Luca never imagined the instructor would bring him here. All the city's toxic thermal waste and suffocating heat get dumped right here. As a kid, Luca breathed this poison daily, knowing he had to escape. If he didn't claw his way out, he would be a miserable loser for life. Suddenly, Quinlan calls out, pulling a highly distracted Luca back to reality. The instructor stands in a dark alley, gesturing for them to follow. They step out into a somewhat busy street, lined with glowing shop windows. Luca wonders if this is the notorious black market where stupid kids vanish. When Quinlan asks if it's his first time here, Luca is highly suspicious. The instructor clearly knows this shady place way better than he does. Looking down, Luca recalls Quinlan's weird order to use cheap prosthetic gear. Why would he want that? Quinlan stops and tells him to prepare. Down the hall, 2 guards block a massive steel door, heavy security. As they approach, a guard orders them to halt. Quinlan demands a meeting. The guard snorts, asking if Quinlan even knows who runs this joint. He asks if he knows the boss, Aleph. Quinlan admits he doesn't, but still wants in. Aggressed, the guard pulls a pistol, aiming it right between the instructor's eyes. Quinlan just grins, but look, before anyone can blink, Luca moves. He blitzes forward, slamming the guard hard onto the concrete floor. The dazed guard looks up, shocked to see this kid looming over him. As they hit the deck, the second guard immediately scrambles to react. Too late, Luca already has the fallen guard's gun aimed at him. Quinlan chuckles, asking the shaking guard if he gets the picture now. He orders him to summon Aleph immediately. Both guards drop their weapons. Luca asks Quinlan what he'd do if he wasn't fast enough. Quinlan casually answers that he would have just figured something else out. Looking around, Luca asks what this facility actually is. With a smirk, Quinlan says it is the absolute hottest spot in the Empire. That explanation only leaves Luca more confused. Quinlan's grin widens. He reveals they are standing inside the Colosseum. Deep inside, 2 guards watch a door. Beyond that door, Luca and Quinlan sit face to face with 3 dangerous figures. He sat right in front in a suit, while his massive bodyguards stood lined up behind him. Glaring at the fat boss, Quinlan points to Luca, demanding he put the kid in the arena. Quinlan says a combat death is fine. Suddenly, Luca understands everything. He finally knows why they bought cheap gear. The boss slowly inhales his cigarette. Then, a surprise, he flicks the burning cherry straight at Quinlan. Luca snaps his hand out, snatching the cigarette before it hits. Quinlan does not flinch, but suddenly they notice a cold reality. 2 guards are aiming guns at them. The fat boss claims they got it wrong. He says he only called them in because executing them here is much easier. Luca scans the room. This is a bluff, he knows it. If the boss truly wanted them dead, he would have done it a long time ago. Right now, 3 weapons are trained on them, plus those guards outside. He acts fast. Luca kicks, sending the heavy table flying. It crashes toward Aleph as a shield, completely blindsiding the heavy guards. Wood splinters everywhere. Luca charges straight through the massive debris. He leaps forward, locking Aleph in a chokehold and taking his gun. Armed with the stolen pistol, Luca fires instantly at the stunned guards. 2 perfect headshots, they drop. Hearing the gunfire, the outside guards panic. They burst through the door, only to find Luca waiting with weapon raised. 2 quick pops, and he sends both of them straight to the afterlife. But wait, this shootout was just a simulation inside Luca's mechanical eye. Back in reality, Quinlan calmly asks about the previous owner of this venue. Aleph asks if they knew Tora, who got caught fixing matches and was ruined. Quinlan calls it a pretty sweet deal since Aleph took over the entire Colosseum. It is just how things go, considering Tora did the exact same thing to get it. Stepping closer, Aleph suddenly points a gun right at Quinlan's face. He demands to know how they have this information, but Quinlan is unfazed. With a cold glare, Quinlan warns Aleph to chill unless he wants to join Tora. That chilling threat works. A cold sweat breaks out on Aleph's face. He orders his guards to stand down and slowly sinks back into his seat. Adjusting his glasses nervously, Aleph asks if they really just want Luca in the fight. Looking the boy over, Aleph scoffs that Luca is way too weak for this. He will easily get slaughtered, but Aleph agrees to the fight under one condition. Quinlan offers up Tora's private safe, claiming he knows exactly where it is hidden. He also knows Aleph took Tora's eye. Now, Aleph is genuinely terrified. He wonders who this man is. Smiling, Quinlan says he is just a ghost. Just a spirit from the past, so Aleph should not worry. Aleph then offers VIP treatment, which Quinlan accepts, demanding they fight their absolute best warrior. Watching this unfold, Luca realizes he still has so much to learn from him. The instructor can completely dominate a room without even moving a single muscle. Soon after, they wait in the Colosseum, holding cells. Quinlan stares at a screen, reminding Luca the match starts in 2 hours. Curiously, Luca asks what is hidden inside that secret safe. Quinlan replies that the treasure could change Aleph's entire life, promising details after they win. Handing over the screen, Quinlan shows Luca his opponent, a total monster. Meet Gabriel, the Iron Fist. Quinlan warned that Colosseum fighters didn't care about the future and would fight dirty to win. One single direct hit from him could finish Luca. Staring right at Luca, Quinlan told him to pay attention. He was about to explain the foundation. The RC combat style. Relaxing his tight grip, Quinlan told Luca to be satisfied with whatever he currently had. Hearing that, Luca argued that being satisfied basically meant defeat, but water never breaks, Quinlan had so quietly insisted. Quinlan then admitted he had been closely watching Luca since his first exam. Quinlan added that he had been watching Luca since his very first exam. And knowing the boy's massive potential, recruiting him was absolutely the right call. Luca scoffed, telling the old man he was just buttering him up. Quinlan patted his shoulder and quietly agreed. Smiling, he mentioned this could be the last time they ever see each other. Luca smiled back just as bright lights suddenly flooded the massive main arena. As Luca made his entrance, the loud announcer mocked him as incredibly bold for stepping up to challenge Gabriel in his very first match. He laughed at Luca, calling him a mere child still drinking from a baby bottle and mockingly calling him good boy, a label Luca absolutely hated. As he marched past the rowdy crowd, angry boos erupted, with people shouting to ask who had even allowed him inside. Glancing around, Luca saw bloodthirsty spectators eager to watch him get utterly broken. Tuning out the noise, he kept marching forward, completely unfazed by their dark, twisted desires. Stepping onto the dirt, Luca knew what these monsters really wanted to witness. They wanted blood, but honestly, this hostile vibe made him feel right. At home, slipping off his hood, he prepared to show these screaming losers exactly what he was truly capable of. Memories of his harsh childhood flashed back to him, remembering how he had never once felt full as a kid. Twice a month, an imperial officer sent food supplies to the orphanage, but the owner always sold off more than half for all the orphan kids. Starvation was normal, but even starving, Luca never stopped training. He devoured every single book, even the oldest, dustiest volumes, while building his raw strength with heavy stone weights. During those intense workouts, the other orphans mocked him as stupid, warning that burning energy would only make him hungrier. Glaring back at them, he declared that if he wanted to eat, he just needed to take the food by force. The strong destroy the weak. That was the ultimate rule of survival. The strong eat their fill and the weak starve, while the other kids wept bitterly after getting beaten up. They tried to drag him down, telling him to stop acting so superior. After all, they claimed he was just another trash from the slums. Ignoring their endless whining, he kept chewing. He had absolutely zero time for the weak. At 12 years old, his raw talent got him noticed by the military, landing him a spot as an imperial trainee, and by 15, he officially made the cut. Knowing those lazy orphans would never understand his drive, he hoped he would never have to see those losers again. During his rigorous training, He completely forgot about that wretched place, believing he was done with it forever. Now standing opposite his massive opponent, the arena shook with chants for Gabriel. Grinning, Gabriel laughed that for them to send a kid as his opponent, Aleph must have put up some serious cash, but money was money. Quietly, Luca began to analyze his target, immediately noticing that Gabriel's physical form was highly asymmetrical and unbalanced, built entirely from various cheap cybernetic factories. The skin rubbing against his metal armor was constantly red and inflamed. Even so, Gabriel was incredibly powerful, his body rebuilt for pure strength. Luca noted this as he stared him down. Then, Gabriel stepped closer. He sneered that Luca looked decent, asking why he didn't just serve him. Luca just smiled back, retorting that Gabriel would definitely need a servant soon. Because tonight he was getting absolutely destroyed, Gabriel was furious. Walking back to his corner, the iron-fisted brute made a vow. He would beat Luca so badly that the kid would beg to serve him. Right then, the announcer kicked off the show with a microphone in hand. Shouting that the rule of destroy or be destroyed was starting, Qin Yuan watched. With the crowd roaring, Aleph announced that a total massacre was starting. Luca clenched his fists, staring at his massive opponent. He knew Gabriel's modified body meant a single hit would cost him his life. Right then, Gabriel charged straight at him, winding up a massive punch. Luca slipped the attack, letting Gabriel's iron fist smash right into the ground. Once more the big man swung, and once again he hit empty air. Seizing the opening, Luca spun and landed a solid kick to his head. Gabriel just laughed right in his face, asking if that kick was meant to tickle. Luca backed off, knowing with his real armor, Gabriel would have shattered. He jumped back to get some breathing room, his blood pumping with excitement. But looking around, he realized he couldn't run forever. This ring was too tight. Gabriel unleashed a barrage of attacks. Luca dodged them, sensing the lethal danger. Every swing could kill him, though his own hits were dealing some damage. Even worse, the crowd was entirely against him, roaring for his brutal defeat. They wanted him crushed, outmatched. Luca wondered what Qin Yuan wanted him to learn. Then the instructor's words echoed, "No matter how little you have, you fight. Fight with what you have, without complaining," staring at his massive enemy. Luca remembered that his master took his good armor, but not his eyes. Qin Yuan expected him to win with brainpower, not just brute force. Gabriel lunged again, but Luca knew Arki's combat was about using everything. You push every single tool to its absolute limit. He activated his mechanical eye, instantly scanning Gabriel's frame. His fists were like cannons, triggered by a mechanism in his shoulder. But they were incredibly slow compared to a real gun, and their trajectory was obvious. He could see the blow coming a mile away, up in the stands. Qin Yuan watched in surprise, a proud grin spreading across his face. The kid was a genius, already mastering this style during his entrance exam. He had the talent, and Qin Yuan urged him to unleash it. Show them what you've got. Meanwhile, Luca slipped past every single blow. Steadily moving in, unable to land a hit, Gabriel started getting desperate. The angry crowd was screaming, begging Gabriel to finally crush the kid. But Luca's focus was laser-sharp. He could read every single move. Remembering how Qin Yuan had handled him, he had an idea. He wanted to try replicating it here. Luca slapped his hand on Gabriel's heavy mechanical arm and delivered a sharp kick directly to his knee. Losing his balance and flying through the air, right then, Gabriel took a brutal heavy kick straight to the face. Sent flying, Luca felt a rush of pure excitement, finally. Realizing what Qin Yuan saw in his potential, Gabriel slowly stood back up. After taking that massive blow, his veins bulging with absolute rage. He screamed that he didn't care what trick Luca used, charging forward, while boasting that none of his moves would fail again, winding up. For a punch so insanely powerful it practically detonated the arena. With a wild manic grin, Luca slipped the blow, letting it graze his cheek before It blew up against the wall. Closing the distance, Luca asks Gabriel if he really believed those massive strikes were useless now. He points out that when you lack raw force, you just close the gap with technique. Springing into the air, Luca flips upside down and traps his opponent in a deadly chokehold before Gabriel can even process what is happening. The grip tightens, Gabriel panics, but there is no time to waste. Luca violently twists Gabriel's neck, a sharp snap, the fight is over. As the body drops, the rookie lands gracefully. Talk about a clean victory. Facing a stunned crowd, Luca tells them they can wait for his loss forever because he is only heading to the very top. Meanwhile, Gabriel is left lying motionless behind him, pulling up his hood. Luca realizes his intense focus only worked because the arena was so controlled. Leaving the arena in absolute silence, he heads toward the exit. Feeling a bit bored, he admits that Kinyuan is actually a decent teacher. The waiting instructor gives him some praise, standing with crossed arms. Kinyuan welcomes him to real combat, and Luca nods in agreement. He learned a lot today. Reaching out, Kinyuan offers him something. Luca accepts it and notices a credit chip, asking if this is his payment. Kinyuan shakes his head, saying the money is actually for Gabriel's medical bills. He warns that while being generous is fine, you cannot be a fool. Luca fires back that he wants to be a soldier, not some saint. Kinyuan laughs it off, calling him completely naive about how connections work. This isn't charity, the instructor explains seriously, it is an investment. It's a strategic move for the future. He reveals he made similar moves with Tora earlier because building a strong network is essential. That's what makes a soldier thrive. Watching Kinyuan walk off, Luca realizes that Kinyuan is playing the long game with him, too. Down the road, those debts will be collected, and he won't be able to refuse. Meanwhile, we find a badly beaten Gabriel resting in a hospital bed. A doctor checking a tablet informs him that due to his massive upgrades, he needs the expensive new Xeonic model. Gabriel yells out in panic, asking if the hospital is trying to rob him since he can't afford it. He complains that others get cheap parts, but the doctor snaps back that no one else has such an heavily modified body. Meanwhile, Luca is quietly standing in the corner, taking in every single word. Without his intervention, the broken fighter is completely doomed. Gabriel keeps shouting. The doctors did not even realize how much he had spent on those extreme body modifications. They did not notice Luca standing at the door, asking how Gabriel was doing. He added that he was glad to see his rival looking so incredibly energetic. But when Gabriel spotted Luca, his eyes practically burned with pure, unfiltered rage. He yelled that he would destroy Luca. Absolute sore loser behavior right here. Stepping closer with an icy glare, Luca reminded him of his pre-fight warning. He remembered Kinyuan's warning. He was going too far. He needed to hold back. Turning to the doctor, he asked about that Xeonic model. Luca pulled out his chip to show his credits, asking if the amount was enough. The doctor nodded, confirming it was plenty. Gabriel stared in total disbelief. Confused by the sudden move, Gabriel demanded to know what he was doing. Paying Gabriel's bills, deeply confused, Gabriel asked why. When Luca claimed he just felt like doing it, Gabriel scoffed at the gesture. He muttered that the good boy nickname fit him perfectly, but pride stung. Talk about a massive blow to his ego, Gabriel quietly asked for his name. Luca told him. Staring back, Gabriel made a sudden, quiet promise. If Luca ever needed help, all he had to do was ask. A heavy debt had been formed. Luca secretly liked the leverage. Soon, they were back at the Accretia training arena. Inside the ring, two fighters squared off. Without hesitation, Ali rushed forward. He threw a massive kick directly at Luca's head, which Luca casually blocked. Looking completely bored, Luca shifted his grip and unleashed Arki's combat style. He spun Ali right around and sent him crashing hard across the ring. Ali was absolutely battered. Sitting down, he asked if Luca learned that from Kinyuan. Luca nodded. Ali looked puzzled, wondering if that was not a bandit style. Luca admitted it was, even if it sounded totally wild to believe. Ali sighed, admitting he could never imagine actually defeating Luca anymore. Luca praised him, calling him the only trainee who could even stand against him. The Colosseum had clearly paid off. Luca smiled, a rare sight for him. Ali noticed his unusually bright mood and asked if Luca could do him a favor. Luca agreed, but soon regretted it inside the Empire of Accretia's visiting room. Extremely annoyed, beside him, Ali refused to meet his gaze. Lillian sat right there, her striking red eyes locked dead onto Luca. Trembling, Luca glared. Ali stammered out an apology. He explained their families were close, so he simply could not say no. Lillian spoke up, asking why he kept avoiding her despite all her visit requests. Luca was blunt, he had zero interest, and expected her to get the hint. Ali winced, begging him to be slightly nicer, but Luca snapped back immediately. He told Ali to shut his mouth, declaring he was already extremely irritated. Lillian did not back down, demanding to know why he hated her so much. Luca replied that he had no time for girls, his focus was entirely on his goal. She asked if getting close to her would not benefit him in some way. He shook his head, explaining that leaning on noble power was highly dangerous. He could lose everything in a flash, and that was not his target. While Ali sweated tensely, Lillian pointed out how incredibly hypocritical that sounded. He was already close with Ali, who also came from a noble family. He was just a friend, nothing to do with family. Lillian finally speaks up. She asks if he will give her a chance. Luca downs his drink. He stands up with a cold no, hoping she never visits him again. As he walks away, Lillian and Ali are left sitting in heavy silence. Outside the visiting room, Ali quickly catches up and calls out his name. He tells Luca he did not have to be so incredibly harsh. Luca replies that it is the only way she will ever leave him alone. Ali asks why he hates her. Luca simply does not trust her motives. He thinks she has an angle. Ali says that makes absolutely no sense. Fearing the unknown is pointless. They could just take things slowly. Luca cuts him off. Does Ali actually have feelings for Lillian? Ali is totally speechless. Shocked, he asks where that even came from. Luca noticed it instantly from his shallow breathing and sudden panic. He gives him a hard stare, stating he is not interested at all. If Ali likes her, he should make a move. Ali stays silent. Deeply unsettled, Ali looks back at the table where they just sat. He knows that is an absolute impossibility for someone in his position. Talk about a shift in scenery. Two figures sit above a glowing magma pit. Luca meditates quietly. He must keep his composure no matter what happens. Beside him is Kinyuan. Luca asks how his mentor would handle the fight. Back in Alepht's office, Luca could not see any easy escape. Getting out untouched without a single weapon seemed completely impossible. Kinyuan tells him his first move would be diving under the table. Luca is baffled. The thugs had guns. Hiding would just trap him. Hiding loses the initiative, but Kinyuan explains he knew Luca would strike first. He would let Luca draw the fire, so what if Luca was alone? Kinyuan smiles. He knew exactly what the kid was planning back there. Luca was trained for max aggression, always charging in head first. But taking that fat boss hostage would have got him shot too. Gangs replace bosses in a heartbeat, but before that could even happen, Kinyuan would have wiped them out and escaped through a secret passage. Luca is stunned. His teacher had predicted everything and mapped an exit. He is steps ahead. The kid cannot begin to read this man. Kinyuan explains that the RC technique unlocks the brain's full perception. Luca gets it. The mental damage comes from pushing his mind too hard. He pauses, then he asks if using the Legion blocks this style. Kinyuan confirms it. These two combat styles are completely incompatible with each other. He explains that once he becomes a guard, he gets a Legion. It uses memory signals, hogging every bit of available processing power. That leaves absolutely no resources left to run the RC technique. Disappointment hits hard. He knew his teacher hid this fact on purpose. If he had known this sooner, he never would have learned it. As Luca turns to leave, Kinyuan asks if this is really the end. Luca just thanks him for everything. Kinyuan watches him walk away. He says the door is always open, but Luca leaves, highly conflicted. Without another word, inside a cold room of the Empire, Luca stood perfectly still. Apparently, 3 months had already passed since the two of them last spoke. Castoria explained he was simply too busy to check on the new trainees. Luca guessed this sudden meeting was about the rebellions. He replied he was just training alone, but Castoria noted something else. In fact, Luca had not been called for any recent missions at all. Nor would he was already strong enough. Luca thanked him. Castoria then asked if he had been training with Kinyuan lately. This direct question made Luca wonder if that was the reason. High Command had clearly noticed his trips to the slums and the black market. Not to mention his fights in the Colosseum, Castoria asked about his combat training. Luca calmly replied that he was no longer training with him. Castoria remarked that since RC combat was useless to the Legion, it was pointless. Completely meaningless for an Imperial soldier. Still, he understood Luca. The untalented were discarded, while the gifted saw no reason to learn it. That was why Kinyuan remained the sole user of RC combat. Luca watched him. Did the commander want him to continue learning this forbidden style? Castoria wanted him to stay close to Kinyuan, so yes. He must continue. In fact, it was an official order. Luca wondered why a commander feared a retired soldier, but stayed silent. He simply agreed to obey, knowing it was useless to argue. Castoria warned him that his eyes were watching closely, and trust me, he meant it. Luca was destined for the very top, even coming from the lower sector. Kinyuan stared at a toy helmet, noting his trainee returned quickly. He had told Luca to return anytime and promised no hard questions. He promised to leave the past alone and ask nothing. Luca thanked him. Getting Kinyuan to teach again was surprisingly easy. Standing inside the shop, Luca asked why they were visiting this place. Kinyuan just wondered aloud if kids these days still liked these toys. He turned to the shopkeeper and declared he would buy everything. Every single toy, the shop owner gasped, asking if he heard right. Luca was equally stunned. Why on earth was Kinyuan buying toys? But arriving at the destination, the truth clicked: an orphanage. Kinyuan told him to put the heavy boxes down and take a rest. Suddenly, a voice called out. Standing behind him was Gabriel. He looked highly irritated, carrying boxes and complaining about being a porter. Luca recalled the giant, offering his help back at the hospital. Since the shop refused to deliver, his help was actually perfect. Gabriel grumbled that he offered help for a fight, not moving boxes. Luca just smiled. He did not need help in a fight. Watching him, Luca noticed the new spinal implant improved Gabriel's balance. His movements were steadier. Both men then glanced toward the front door. Seeing Kinyuan near the door, Gabriel asked who that man was. If he was truly infamous, even Aleph could not handle him. Luca warned Gabriel that if he were him, he would not cross him. Best not to poke his nose where it did not belong, unless he wanted to die. Luca looked around, figuring this was likely the orphanage where Kinyuan spent his childhood. That explained why Kinyuan kept coming back here. Suddenly, a few children ran up. They happily gathered around the two soldiers, shouting out their warm thanks. As they handed out gifts, Gabriel immediately started grumbling about everything. One kid called him ugly, and soon a couple of the children started a fierce tug of war over a gift box, desperate to claim it. Watching this scene, Luca was instantly reminded of his own brutal childhood, where absolute fairness never existed. To survive and get what you wanted, you had to obtain raw power. As Luca stood there lost in deep memories, someone suddenly called his name. He spun around to find Kinyuan, who quietly asked to speak with him alone. Leaning against a wire fence, Kenyuan explained that he occasionally visited this lower sector. He praised the director, noting he did a solid job despite having zero funding. Luca grew curious, asking the old veteran if he had actually grown up here. Kenyuan shrugged, saying he had completely forgotten those distant days of his. He was just stopping by. Then the older man casually dropped a strange hint. Maybe he had even visited the very orphanage where Luca himself was raised. Staring at him, Luca felt Kenyuan looked like a completely normal retired soldier. A broken fighter stripped of former glory, his nervous system wrecked by brain trauma. Luca wondered if this tragic, ruined state would be his own future someday. Suddenly, Kenyuan changed his tone completely, demanding they get straight to the point. In a threatening voice, he asked Luca, who ordered him to return and seek him out. His glowing combat eyes flared to life as Kenyuan turned, demanding to know if it was Commander Castoria. Luca froze in absolute shock, standing completely still. Masking his panic, Luca fixed his cold gaze on Kenyuan and asked him exactly what he meant by that. How did the old man know the chief's orders? Was he hiding some dangerous secret? Was that why Castoria was concerned? Luca slowly began preparing a preemptive strike, realizing he might have to eliminate his former instructor. But Kenyuan simply stared back, calmly telling him to calm down right now. He warned Luca that if he tried to attack him with full combat power, it would be impossible to stop the fight without killing him on the spot. Drenched in cold sweat, Luca kept his composure, declaring his absolute loyalty to the Empire, but Kenyuan scoffed, telling Luca he was completely blind to the truth. The kid was just a clueless puppet who did not even understand his own path. Resting a heavy hand on his shoulder, Kenyuan said he would not judge him. A soldier merely follows orders, but then Kenyuan asked a chilling question. Did Luca honestly believe his very first meeting with Kenyuan was his own choice? The moment Luca altered that projectile's path without using a combat eye, the military high command already started preparing their moves. They finally had someone capable of mastering the forbidden RCs, just like Kenyuan. Luca's choices were never his own. Luca reeled in shock, refusing to believe this was all orchestrated. He desperately wanted to believe his path was chosen by his own free will. So he firmly told the instructor that it was his decision, but Kenyuan only smirked, reminding him that everyone is a slave to someone, knowingly or not. Luca was probably desperate to run from this dark reality, but there was no escape. Luca was still young. Before leaving, Quinlan told him to return soon and feel free to report this to the commander, but the reflective soldier knew he did not believe Quinlan's promise. Still, as the teacher said, the chief wanted him to keep studying the arcanes. With his mind racing, Luca tried not to dwell on his instructor's warnings or doubt the Empire, but what if his very drive to succeed was not even his own? Later, inside the simulated training grounds, Luca sat quietly in full armor, resting on a bench at the far end. Staring down, he felt sick with frustration for failing to report the day before. Doing that would have triggered a mandatory psychological exam right away. And with his mind in complete chaos, he would have failed miserably. Besides, the Empire never tolerated dangerous thoughts. They would throw him out and drag him to a labor camp. Remembering their last meeting, Luca realized that Quinlan already knew he would hesitate to report anything to the chief. Suddenly, the training chamber doors hissed open, venting thick white steam. Ella stumbled out of the room, looking completely drained of strength. As he stood there panting, he blindly caught a bottle tossed his way. It was Luca. Watching him sweat, Luca noted how different Ella seemed. Lately, Ella simply laughed, admitting he had to push harder after that loss. The blonde asked if his friend had come just to cheer him on. Luca shook his head, admitting he actually needed a massive favor. He recalled Ella once warned him that some families bought the test answers, a dangerous secret. Looking closely, Luca asked how Ella had passed his own psychological aptitude test. Ella stared back, asking if Luca realized how incredibly dangerous that was. To even ask, sitting down, Luca assured him he made sure they were alone. Ella sighed, promising not to press for reasons, but admitted there was a trick. You create a fake, simplified version of your ego to show the world, burying your real self while displaying exactly what the examiners want to see. As a confused Luca questioned this, Ella explained that trauma often shatters minds, wiping memories, or completely rewriting who people are. They were just doing the exact same thing, but completely on purpose. By acting like a perfectly loyal soldier, a secondary personality takes over your mind. Ella had built his own 2 months before the big exam, but the danger was real. Do it too long and you forget your true self, Luca asked where. Ella learned this, realizing that with this method, he could easily pretend to be his old self before meeting Ella and Quinlan. Looking at Luca, Ella admitted he did not know what was happening, but urged him to be extremely careful. Messing with those psychological tests was a death sentence. Luca smirked, never expecting such caution from him, when suddenly his combat senses flared up. It caught him completely off guard. Quinlan was calling. Now watch. The two met up shortly after in the dark lower sectors, standing in front of an old building. Staring up, Quinlan announced that today would be a straightforward exercise, casually praising how well built the hideout was for a simple gang. But a cold sweat broke over Luca. Quinlan acted completely normal, as if that orphanage nightmare never happened, which terrified him. The instructor then gave him 20 seconds in front of the facing the locked door. Quinlan orders Luca to take down the gangsters. Luca simply nods. He places his hand on the handle, getting ready to breach, blowing the door completely off its hinges. Inside, a few gangsters are just lounging around. Startled by the sudden blast, one of the thugs leaps to his feet. Meanwhile, Luca is already in the room, walking straight toward the man staring him down. Standing face to face, the thug asks what he wants, sneering that he does not look like a customer. Calmly, Luca notices another thug charging right at him with a weapon. Scanning the room, the kid maps his targets: 3 armed, 1 leader. Plus, there is another thug currently hiding out inside the bathroom. Suddenly, shoved by a gun right in his face, Luca hears the thug mock his bad luck. He says it is a shame to put down a kid, but watch this, because a sudden, brutal punch sends him straight into the ceiling. The other guys freeze. They stare up at their partner pinned to the roof, completely unable to process what just happened. Meanwhile, Luca stands with fists clenched, muttering that he has been way too stressed lately and needs a distraction. Up above, the unconscious gangster slips, letting his handgun tumble down. While the other thugs are still dazed and watching the ceiling, the weapon falls toward the floor. They quickly snap out of it, aiming to shoot Luca. But the kid is too fast. He reaches out, catching the falling gun. Armed and ready, he fires in a flash, hitting every thug in the arm and instantly disarming them. Across the room, the furious leader raises his pistol, screaming curses as he unloads multiple shots directly at the kid. Luca slips past every bullet effortlessly, mocking the leader's terrible skill. He wonders how such a pathetic shooter got to be the boss. Next, he turns his gun toward the bathroom. The door swings open, revealing a thug with his pants down, clutching a stun baton and looking completely lost. He stands there, totally clueless about the absolute chaos that just went down. Keeping his gun locked on him, Luca tells him to knock himself out, unless he wants to lose some limbs. The guy glances at his stun baton, weighing his options. A second later, a massive surge of electricity lights up the room. Standing over the freshly fried thug, Luca realizes the bathroom is not empty yet. He still senses someone inside, stepping slowly through the doorway. He discovers a captive girl, stripped bare and shivering on the floor. Luca's face instantly darkens with pure rage, cursing the scum on the floor. He rushes to untie the ropes binding her. Back out in the hallway, Quinlan notes that it took the kid exactly 12 seconds to clear the room. He claps in approval while Luca walks out, wrapping his own shirt around the girl. Still seething, Luca demands to know why they cannot just execute these monsters. Kinyuan tells him no, they are outsiders here and making too much noise. Is a bad idea. He reminds Luca that the world is full of defenseless people. That poor girl suffered because she lacked the power to protect herself. And that is exactly why Luca must grow strong, to never share her fate. Normally the cold kid would dismiss weaklings like her, but right now, all he can feel is an overwhelming sense of disgust. From then on, Kinyuan keeps dragging Luca down into the brutal lower sectors. Completely blind, Kinyuan had a reason. He didn't care about winning, he wanted Luca adapting to any threat. Learning to read his surroundings, still, the silent instructor kept pushing. Sent straight into battle with zero explanation, soon they visited a local shop. Deep in the lower sector, a red-haired girl in overalls waved. Kinyuan called her Gilda, ordering a black coffee with oil on top. Luca got the same order, just skipping the greasy layer. He wondered aloud. Did they really have to stop here? Kinyuan asked if he felt proud. Proud to visit the girl he rescued. Yeah, Luca actually saved Gilda. Pulled her right from a vicious gang after she survived terrible torture. Somehow she kept her sanity and built a normal life from scratch. The whole kidnapping, all because of an old friend, Kinyuan explained. See, Gilda grew up orphaned, but showed crazy talent for fixing things. Kinyuan paid her tuition anonymously, she never knew. She never knew, Luca asked the mentor if he knew her from day one. Suddenly the front door swung open, talk about perfect timing. The guys looked up to find Gabriel staring right back at them. He demanded to know why Luca was here, then ordered a cold beer. Gilda told him to pass, his body was already exhausted from work. It turns out Kinyuan introduced Gilda to Gabriel after the rescue. Now he acts as her guard and she fixes up his gear. Luca teased the massive guy, saying he should really mind his mechanic. Gabriel scoffed, complaining it was just a single drink. Kinyuan chimed in. He warned Luca about messing with those local thugs. Things were escalating. The bosses were plotting revenge. Even Kinyuan could not protect everyone forever. Especially Gilda. Still, Kinyuan promised the gang would lie low for now. Gilda looked extremely worried, asking exactly how much time they had. Kinyuan figured a few months, maybe even years. Luca knew his limits. He could never visit the lower sectors alone. High command would forbid it. Staring at Gilda and Kinyuan, he realized this might be his final visit. Despite her brutal past, she kept moving forward with her life. While Gabriel kept putting his life on the line every single day. But Luca refused to feel sorry. Honestly, never coming back here might help. Keeping his distance was safer for everyone, he decided, finishing his coffee. Back at the Imperial headquarters, Castoria's heavy office doors remained shut. Inside, Luca finished reporting. Commander Castoria sighed, noting Kinyuan's odd behavior. He was always up to something. Castoria pointed out Luca's late start. A late recruit normally never gets this chance, but the Empire was desperate. Even the commander himself had no real clue what drove Kinyuan. Back when Castoria was just a raw recruit, Kinyuan was already elite. A shadow operative working secret missions, Luca listened with wide eyes. It was a lot to take in, plus Kinyuan genuinely liked him. Of all the recruits Kinyuan ever trained, Luca was the sole survivor. The only one left standing, Castoria praised his skill but warned him. He was highly vulnerable. A psychological evaluation was definitely next. Nodding silently, Luca had already prepared for this outcome. Resting his chin on his hand, Castoria decided to be brutally honest with him. Trainees on these classified missions usually faced one of two paths. They either vanished forever to protect secrets or climbed straight to the top. Castoria hoped he would rise, but the young recruit remained modest. Luca only followed orders, trusting his commander to protect him later. A warm grin spread slowly across the commander's face now. He made an incredible offer. Complete this well, and I will adopt you. Luca Castoria has a nice ring to it, the chief laughed. Luca stood frozen in disbelief, wondering if the chief was actually serious. The sudden offer echoed in his mind as he walked away. Still dazed by those words, he joined the psychological testing queue. A scanning drone hovered directly in front of him, preparing to begin. It detected an unusual flash of happiness and asked why he smiled. Luca just laughed, telling the machine it was none of its business. Elsewhere, heavy blows rattled the training hall. Ilya was hard at work. A rapid series of brutal strikes sent the heavy sandbag swinging wildly. He finished the drill with a snapping kick, sweat dripping onto the floor. With one final explosive punch, he sent the massive bag flying back. Gasping for breath, Ilya finally finished his intense daily routine. He carefully uncapped a small vial of thick, green joint medicine. Wincing in discomfort, Ilya massaged the dense oil onto his sore elbows. Luca, sitting nearby, teased him about grinding his bones to dust. Smiling, he asked if his hardworking friend had actually passed the mind test. Ilya confirmed he did, promising he would always have Luca's back. With a sudden serious look, Ilya admitted he had a secret. He could not share any details now, but he would need a favor soon. Luca watched him carefully, sensing the deep weight behind those words. He promised that if Ilya ever got into trouble, he would save him. He would gladly risk his own life to keep his friend safe. Ilya smiled, hoping it would never actually come down to that. Luca was incredibly curious, but he decided not to pry just yet. He would let things unfold in their own time, step by step. With the test passed and the chief's trust fully earned, Luca focused. Joining the Castoria family was the only goal driving him forward now. But peace never lasts long. Suddenly, the commander gathered the troops. He announced the creation of a brand new elite suppression force. They were tasking 3 prominent noble families, led by the Ramons. Hearing that name, Luca instantly stiffened and looked over at Ilya. Remembering Lillian, he finally understood the secret favor his friend meant. Shortly after, the soldiers boarded an armored train that sped away. Luca introduced himself as leader of the 21st Suppression Battalion. The troops quickly saluted, but Luca realized the truth. The higher-ups were using trainees to lead a real, bloody campaign. His team was split into 2 units, numbering 27 men total. Beside him was Sergeant Kodrak, serving as his orders assistant, composed mostly of rugged veterans. These men knew they were just tools for trainee practice. Because of that, they hated taking orders from a kid, but Luca knew he had to seize total control right now. Luca considered 2 main paths, the first being to leave it to Kodrak, or second, well, Kodrak jumped as Luca suddenly snapped, warning everyone in a cold voice that he was far above them. They would obey or they would suffer. He chose to rule with brute force, wanting to crush their doubt as they all stared him down. But then the surgeon stepped up, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. He wanted to talk things out quietly. Big mistake. Luca grabbed the man's arm, shocking everyone, and threw him straight into the crowd. "How dare you touch your superior officer without my absolute permission?" Luca roared, stepping forward. "Are you not taking me seriously because I am young?" He paced forward. Luca pointed out that he also came from the slums and grew up in an orphanage. But did they know the real difference between them? Pacing back over, he looked down and declared that he was just infinitely better. They might not get it yet, but they would very soon. He was going to be the finest platoon leader they ever saw. The surgeon stayed kneeling on the floor, absorbing every word in silence. Standing up, Kodrak finally muttered that he understood and would be careful. Luca turned away. He knew the message had landed loud and clear. He rejected the easy path, but get this, meanwhile, over at the massive rebel stronghold defying the Empire, a giant triangular ship made its approach. Inside, the suppression platoon stood in tight formation, shaking his head. Disbelief, Eli sighed deeply upon learning that his chaotic friend had actually beaten his own man. One of his own men, Luca, simply shrugged, explaining that playing nice gets you absolutely zero respect because to them, he was just some kid. Right then, the room's lights suddenly shifted, catching everyone off guard. An officer on the stage announced they were skipping the usual pleasantries. He explained the rebels had seized an ancient arcane civilization outpost, running their entire operation from inside. It was heavily fortified by 2 walls, a massive dome force field, and 5 arcane anti-aircraft towers. The 11th Brigade, clad in full body armor, was tasked with destroying these towers, while the rest of the army flanked the enemy, clearly. The Empire was playing for keeps. The commander then announced that the operation would commence in 90 minutes, urging them to finalize everything. Not long after, Eli and Luca stood outside their armored vehicles as Eli wondered quietly how their boring support duty was any different from a lazy picnic. Luca pointed out that the Empire actually wanted them to survive. After a quiet pause, Eli stared at Luca, but before he could even utter a word, Luca cut him off, asking if he was trying to bring up the Ramon's family. Even if they were close, there was absolutely nothing they could do. If you side with rebels, not even your own family can save you. Eli replied that he was not. He was not expecting a miracle, but if there was any chance, he hoped to save Lillian. And angry Luca snapped, asking if Eli loved her enough to throw away his life. Eli muttered that she was his first love. Luca scoffed, telling him to man up. He declared he had turned a blind eye until now, but this crossed a line. He warned Eli that trying to save Lillian would only get him killed. Turning his back, Luca walked off, warning Eli not to do anything stupid. Take that as a final warning. With a serious face, Eli replied that he understood. He turned and walked the opposite way, but there was a catch. Knowing Archie's strength, Eli realized Luca's warning was a lie. His friend Luca was actually planning to save Lillian anyway, no matter what Eli thought. Yet for her own sake, Lillian had to be completely destroyed. Eli hoped it would happen in the chaos, before they ever crossed paths. That was his last desperate wish. Meanwhile, Luca stared down at his combat helmet. The important thing was keeping the head and chest safe. If those stayed whole, Imperial troops could survive almost anything. Then Kodrak approached, calling out for the squad leader. Luca asked what he wanted. The surgeon, Kodrak, admitted he knew Luca's skills and checked his background. With command, Luca scoffed. So what? Kodrak continued, requesting that once fighting begins, Luca listens to his advice, especially since he had served the Empire for 10 years. Luca told him not to worry, promising he would listen to anyone with a smart suggestion. Kodrak then thanked him. Moments later, the heavy dropship touched down near the rebel base. The bay doors hissed open, revealing the armored brigade marching out, fully clad in heavy, mechanical combat suits. This squad was responsible for neutralizing those towers. Only after their success would the other units move in. An order to open fire was given, and the entire brigade fired up their thrusters. Screaming forward, they moved so fast that they left a fiery trail across the sky behind them. Holding formation, they headed straight for the rebel stronghold's anti-aircraft defenses. Meanwhile, the towers hummed, charging up a massive blast to wipe them out. Suddenly, opening a compartment in his chest armor, one soldier unleashed a deadly rain of missiles directly at the tower. Simultaneously, the tower fired a blazing energy beam, which the soldiers swiftly dodged. After the tower's initial blast, they launched another heavy assault at the energy shield, sending more rockets slamming into its base. A massive explosion erupted, yet the shield stood firm, rising from the thick dust cloud. 2 glowing red eyes appeared. A single soldier kept charging forward, pressing straight for the tower. The battery fired again, but the blast completely missed the target. Now, right in front of the tower, the warrior Ready to full-force blow, raising his heavy spear, he delivered a devastating strike against the energy shield. Under the impact, the barrier began to crack. Meanwhile, his squad mates kept firing rockets to weaken the defenses. Finally, the barrier shattered under their overwhelming power. Luca watched everything from inside the ship, quite surprised at how quickly they managed to drop the barrier. Next, they had to neutralize the towers according to the plan within 1 minute. If they failed, they would be in serious trouble if the armored brigade did not handle the towers. The main suppression forces would have to take the hit and clear them themselves. Then a message came: cleared. They were to proceed directly to the next phase of the operation. The battlefield was cruel and deadly, yet it offered an insane adrenaline rush. And Luca absolutely loved it. Without that rush, he would have lost his mind. A long time ago, heading toward the exit, he ordered his battalion to follow him, eager to finally test his skills in battle. The plan was for the infantry to swarm from all sides, trapping the rebels. The fort's underground tunnels were a complete maze. They had an old map, but the rebels had heavily modified the paths. Amid the explosions and chaos, the troops advanced under fire. Then a soldier pointed out that the rebels likely limited the underground entrances to keep the myrmidons out. At the entrance, they waited, held their formation, staying highly cautious. Luca announced he would take the lead from here. Kodrak immediately warned him that it was too risky, especially in a place likely crawling with traps. Luca asked if the sergeant was afraid of the consequences if he died, and Kodrak honestly answered yes. Before Kodrak could argue, Luca snapped his helmet shut. He did not care what happened to him down there. Charging ahead, Luca repeated that he was lighting, ordering them to follow. No hesitation. Felt a sudden chill, as if his own men were ready to stab him in the back. But he had no time to worry about that now. Thinking of the girl, Luca remembered he had to eliminate Lillian before Aaliyah could arrive to rescue her. His friend was likely pushing through a different tunnel right now. Advancing rapidly with his troops, Luca could keep pace by sacrificing his own men, but he refused to let emotions cost him loyal soldiers. He would take all the risks himself, just as a trap triggered. Right above him, Kodrak screamed Luca's name. In a split second, Luca drew his blade and sliced the trap's pipe, triggered by his own movement. Utilizing Arky's method, Luca heightened his senses to the absolute maximum, letting him detect chemical traces and subtle shifts in the air. Honestly, who could blame them? The soldiers stared at Luca, completely shocked. Luca felt his arteries swell, his heart pounding violently while the pressure in his brain pushed him to his limits. Still charging ahead, he was highly frustrated by his slow men, wanting to punch Kodrak. He knew the theory, but now he felt firsthand how prolonged use of Arky's method meant brain damage. Luca reached the door, almost there. On the other side, several rebel soldiers waited nervously, waiting for movement. Luca kicked the door open, sending it flying along with one of the enemy soldiers. The remaining rebels immediately prepared for combat, aiming their weapons straight at Luca. He gripped his sword as they fired in his. Not flinching once, Luca deflected every single incoming round with his sword. The second the firing stopped, he lunged forward, immediately slicing through two enemies. Blood sprayed everywhere, a total crimson mess. Next, he drew his blade straight across a third soldier's neck, killing him instantly. Only one shaken soldier remained, hoisting a heavy bazooka and firing it, but with one clean, casual swing, Luca sliced the rocket in half, triggering a premature explosion before it could reach him. Smoke filled the room. The rebel desperately searched for a body, praying it was all over. No chance. Luca burst from the haze, sprinting right at him. Too late. The terrified rebel stood absolutely frozen, powerless to stop. What came next? Suddenly, the main Imperial platoon arrived, witnessing the disastrous aftermath, carnage everywhere. Spotting the bloody bodies, Kodrak looked completely Terrified but Luca, his sword still dripping, simply asked the sergeant why they were waiting, declaring they were pushing ahead and ordering them to keep up. Suddenly, rebel troops opened fire from all sides, their barrage slamming straight into the Imperial wall. Scanning the battlefield, Luca realized this massive room was highly organized, likely a prepared defensive line. Looking at his tactical map, he saw they were deep inside and closing in on the escaping royalty. Quickly, he launched a drone to scout the area. The live feed showed roughly 100 troops and several civilians. Lillian might be in that crowd. The sergeant warned Luca that they were too far ahead. They needed backup. It was a fair point, especially since Luca was totally exhausted from overloading his arc. Combat system. Suddenly, more gunfire echoed, but it was not aimed at them. It was directed elsewhere. Looking over, Luca saw another Imperial unit joining the battle from another side. Perfect. He immediately ordered his men forward to exploit the chaos. The rebels pivoted, turning their weapons toward the new arrivals who had already deployed energy shields, but the enemy guns were incredibly fast. Those temporary shields would disintegrate in just a matter of seconds. Not yet, Luca muttered the warning. He knew some of these rebel rifles were heavy enough to puncture his armor. High risk. They had 8 high-caliber weapons active, so he had to wait until at least half of them stopped to reload. The moment arrived, Luca vaulted over the barricade, shouting for his men to take cover as the rebels swung their barrels toward him. Kodrak panicked, seeing his commander jump out without a shield. But regular pistols and rifles could not pierce Luca's heavy armor. Hitting the ground, he drew his sidearm to take out the dangerous heavy gunners. He aimed carefully and pulled the trigger. Direct hit, the heavy weapons detonated in massive explosions. Swiftly, Luca moved straight into the middle of the enemy squad, denying them any easy shots. Then, with a blinding sword slash, he severed 2 rebels' legs. Like dry leaves, in this absolute chaos, he was simply unstoppable. One terrified rebel immediately throws up his hands to surrender. Luca orders Kodrak to secure the prisoners, who promptly obeys. Looking around, Luca spots several fallen Imperial soldiers. He checks the armor. They belong to LA's platoon. LA is pushing deep into enemy lines, but at a terrible cost. He is seething with rage, desperate waste of his own men. He wants to save LA, but duty demands a brutal choice. He must choose between his friend and the mission. If he finds Lillian, his strict orders are to execute her immediately. Luca does not care if LA hates him as long as she survives this. He orders Kodrak to leave and regroup with another platoon. The surgeon stops and calls Luca an incredible fighter, but a terrible leader. Luca snaps back. Without him, they would have suffered even more losses. He demands to know what the surgeon's actual issue is. Kodrak points out that Luca repeatedly abandoned his squad to fight alone. That is not real leadership. Annoyed, Luca instantly fires back with excuses. He claims he went alone because his men are simply too weak. They cannot comprehend his orders, and he hates listening to their whining. Kodrak calmly warns him that he will not be invincible forever. Luca tells him he can mock him when that day actually comes. Kodrak promises to remember that. Walking off, Luca mutters a final warning. He will keep the warning in mind and reflect if he fails. Kodrak wishes him luck, wondering how someone so arrogant can be so open-minded. As Luca advances, the heavy silence of the ruined corridors closes in. Pushing ahead, he notices scorched walls and the bodies of fallen nobles. The same slaughter is likely happening in every tunnel of this fortress. He knows LA is a true friend, someone he fully trusts. Yet this very friend is burning through Imperial soldiers for a personal grudge. He is wasting lives on a hopeless chase. No proper commander risks their entire squad just to hunt down rebels. Even if LA manages to locate Lillian, getting her out of here is impossible. Let's be honest, you have to wonder if LA has completely lost his mind. He does not need to die alongside her in a fit of desperate emotion. Suddenly, a noise draws his attention to a hiding rebel peeking out. The man immediately begs for mercy, claiming to be a Ramon's noble. Luca does not care about his surrender, he only wants one name. He demands to know Lillian's location, but the hostage looks away. The man stammers that he has no idea where she went. His eyes shift, a blatant lie. Luca brutally grabs his face. The prisoner screams in agony. Luca demands to know which way she ran. This is the hostage's absolute final warning. Terrified, he quickly breaks. He gasps that she went down, but he does not know any shortcuts. He is not a direct family member. Luca then asks about his friend. The hostage nods, whispering that the crazy soldier left him like this. He calls LA insane, leaving him broken and barely clinging to life. They knew each other, but before he could finish, Luca executed him. A fountain of blood sprayed the air as Luca walked away, rationalizing his choice. The targets were definitely doomed anyway, so ending it quickly was actually a merciful release. Usually, taking a life felt like nothing, but today was different. Screams and echoes of gunshots grew terrifyingly louder with every single passing second. If his closest ally decided never to return, what was his next move? In this very moment, Luca stood frozen in a ruined room completely littered with cold bodies. Even amidst the horror, he remembered how that friendship always made him paranoid. He constantly worried about the future, but now the real nightmare was here. What would he do if his friend actually betrayed the entire empire? Luca stepped over the bodies and pushed through. A long hallway stretched ahead, lined with the bodies of dead soldiers. Reaching the ruined hall, Luca immediately shouted out his old friend's name. Standing with his back turned, the blond man slowly looked over his shoulder. Luca glared at him, accusing his friend of sacrificing their own comrades. He had sent soldiers to their graves just to satisfy some selfish desire. The young blonde intruder was currently cornering a small, trembling group. Lillian was quickly spotted among them. The intruder confronted Luca, claiming all this chaos was actually her fault. Hand on his sword, Luca knew this confrontation was completely unavoidable. The intruder sneered and directly challenged Luca to draw his steel. Luca drew his blade, muttering that he would beat some sanity into him. He braced himself for impact, knowing this was going to be brutal. But when the swords clash, all theory goes right out the window. Watching the family retreat, the intruder realized Luca was just stalling. To prevent their escape, the assassin knew he had to strike them first. He had to strike first, even if it meant his friend would hate him forever. This was the only way to avoid staining his hands with his friend's blood. Luca saw through his moves and yelled out that Lillian was the target. The attacker lunged forward, but a sudden gunshot cut him off. It was Luca firing rapidly, desperately trying to block his path. Predicting his movement path bought crucial time. But the intruder revealed he had already boosted his cybernetic signals. He had amplified his enhancements before starting, drastically increasing his speed. A single pistol shot was never going to slow him down. Guards scrambled to react immediately, training their heavy weapons on him. The assassin deflected the first oncoming bullet with his gauntlet. That bullet bounced straight back, instantly taking out a guard. Without missing a beat, he spun and slashed the second guard. Vigo Ramon screamed for him to stop, begging for mercy. His blade pierced straight through Vigo's head without pausing. With the defenders dead, he turned his blade on the parents. Both fell instantly, leaving only a trail of blood behind. He turned, cold eyes locking onto the last target left, Lillian. Luca frantically tried to stop him, but the killer simply stood before her. The killer promised he wouldn't forget her face until she was dead, with his blade. Raised high, he got ready to strike, claiming a quick end was his only mercy. But she laughed. The young woman stared right back at him and started to laugh even as tears flowed down her cheeks, while Lillian kept laughing. Luca screamed at the attacker to stop. In a flash, Luca lunged, throwing himself to tackle the warrior away from Lillian. Both men crashed down together, while Lillian watched from a distance. Catching her breath, she turned back. In an instant, the attacker pinned Luca down, pressing the cold steel right against his throat. Strangled and trapped, Luca gasped out, asking if he had seen Lillian's face. She was smiling while her entire family died. Confused, Luca heard the warrior explain Lillian was finally free after being used as a marriage tool. Angry and annoyed, Luca demanded to know what he was talking about. The attacker stood up. Luca was left flat on the dirt. Stop defending her, he warned, because she is nothing but a traitor. Helping him up, Lillian stood by Luca as he stood tall and argued that the treason charge was just a convenient lie to murder them. If they really were traitors, their defense would never have been so incredibly weak. Thinking it through, Luca realized he was right. His logic made sense. Breaking into the fortress was brutal. But once inside, the resistance was practically non-existent. Their army was tiny. Even with all this proof, the attacker glared, asking why it mattered. At this rate, Luca knew Ailey would end up dead alongside Lillian. Though Ailey tried to quiet her, Lillian suddenly spoke up, admitting her father was not innocent. He had hidden a powerful, forbidden relic. Facing Luca, she explained that this relic was the Empire's real target. Then she pulled out the ancient device, explaining it was the only thing powering the fortress. Confused, Luca asked why she was telling him all this. But Lillian smiled. She knew he did not actually want to kill her. He was just terrified that Ailey would end up hating him forever. A heavy truth that left the warrior completely frozen. His only real fear was that the Empire would execute Ailey next. Suddenly, she offered a desperate choice that could save all three of them. Explaining the relic could power a hidden teleportation gate deep underground. Staring straight into his eyes, she begged him to help them escape. She held the artifact out to him, putting their lives in his hands. Shocked, Luca questioned if such a machine even existed. But Lillian confirmed it was a secret route hidden in the tunnels. If he still doubted her, she told him he could kill her. But she begged him to help activate it, wanting Ailey to survive too. She urged him to run with them and simply lie in his report. Though Luca highly doubted the Empire would overlook such an escape route, Lillian promised him that only the true heirs of the Ramuna's family knew of it, proving they would be safe as he weighed his options. A brutal choice. Lucas honestly did not care about the fate of Lillian at all. His only real worry was keeping his friend Ailey completely safe. A quiet death on the chaotic battlefield is too easy to fake. Lucas finally looks up, his difficult decision now fully made. He quickly cuts Ailey off, demanding a single promise before they go. Here is the condition: if the teleport fails, do not stop him. Lucas warns his friend, not even Lillian wants to see him dead today. Staring hard, Lucas waits for Ailey to give his word. With a heavy sigh, Ailey finally promises to keep the deal as agreed. He stands and leads them silently down the dark stairs. Lucas trails right behind them, keeping a watchful eye on the entrance. In his mind, Lucas admits he has lost. He is actually helping the wanted fugitive. As they march forward, Ailey suddenly calls for Lucas to wait. Lucas turns around slowly, his expression cold as Lillian steps up close. She gently wipes the drying blood from his pale face. Lucas urges them on, muttering that they should just get married already since they are alive. Holding hands, Lillian whispers a soft, tearful apology. She never imagined their desperate situation would ever get this bad. But Ailey comforts her, saying she showed him the world and changed him forever. Without her presence, Ailey admits he would have gone completely insane. She helped him realize he is not broken, just very different. Watching them closely, Lucas realizes she planted those highly dangerous thoughts. Such rebellious ideas could easily spread and bring down the great empire. A collapsed nation would leave them completely open to a brutal enemy invasion. Allowing ruin is not an option. Lucas must eliminate the threat. He has to do it with his own hands, even if that dangerous threat is Ali. In his heart, he tells himself he is not a traitor. They finally reach the tunnel. Lillian confirms it is a secret route. She explains the Emperor manipulated her father to activate the fortress. Lucas cuts her off, demanding to know how much further they must go. Lillian points ahead, reassuring him they are almost past the final corridor. She softly thanks him, but Lucas cold-heartedly rejects her gratitude. He is only doing this to pay a debt to Ali, next time she dies. Lucas bids Ali a silent farewell, muttering for him to stay safe. Ali remains completely silent. Lillian quickly tries to map out their escape. She suggests fleeing toward Border City and meeting up after they separate. Lillian invites Lucas to leave the Empire with them, but he refuses. Sliding back against the stone wall, he feels completely exhausted by everything. He made a mistake helping Ali. Now he must plan his report. Lucas hopes the chief will focus on Kinyuan, since neither is special. With this simple reasoning, he is confident his superior will not investigate. No awkward questions will be asked. They finally reach a massive door. The giant metal gates stand locked tight at the end of the hall. Lucas turns to Ali, warning him to be ready if the device is gone. Ali understands completely. If the teleporter is missing, they are finished. One slip up and they are dead, the moment the panel hums to life. Shiver shoots through Luca. Instantly, his gaze sharpens. Hunting for whatever triggered his gut, the door starts to slide. And the grim answers wait just ahead, no turning back now. He closes his eyes, shutting out the world his mind focuses. Luca smells it, the heavy stench of fresh blood, oil, and iron. No human heartbeat, his eyes snap open at the silent nightmare. 4 Imperial guards in heavy steel armor stand waiting for them. Staring them down, Luca knows they are cornered, game over. Fighting even one of these armored giants is sheer suicide, and now, 4. And the nightmare gets worse if they capture Lillian alive. She will break under the torture and spill everything. Luca stares at the wreckage of his dream, giving Ile a quiet life impossible. A complete illusion. The only escape is to end Lillian now, hiding their plot. But striking first against those massive guards is pure suicide. Luca feels their cold eyes tracking him. 1 second of delay ruins everything. No time left. Ile knows he has to pull the trigger, now. A sudden blast, a bullet tears through Lillian, and she collapses backward. His hand still trembling on the grip, Ile watches her empty body fall. A guard steps close, demanding to know why they waited to shoot. Ile lowers the barrel, calmly stating he just disposed of a useless hostage. The captain barks, demanding a report and why they brought a rebel here. The heavy troopers grab Ile, pushing him out into the corridor. Luca stands utterly still, watching them drag his only friend away. Later, under the cold lights, Luca stands rigid before his superior. He is praised for leading the 21st Battalion through the fire. Himalas flips through the report, noting the good work, but warns him. He needs to work with Kinyuan. Suddenly, the focus shifts to Lillian. The captain wants to know why that rebel girl trusted Luca specifically. Luca lies easily, claiming he and Ile used her as a human shield. A perfect cover story, but the old man looks skeptical. Himalas leans forward, asking about the deep bond they shared. Hands clasped behind his back, Luca says they are not that stupid. Neither he nor Ile would throw away everything for personal feelings. Though he admits they wanted to give her a chance to live. With a dry sigh, the captain waves him off to get some sleep. Luca turns to go, but the cold voice pulls him back. One last thing. Himalas reveals that the Ramon's family completely annihilated Ile's unit with ease. Seeing Luca freeze, the captain notes it was a total surprise. The files confirm they were caught completely off guard, slaughtered in their sleep. Luca stands silent, then remarks that if he had been in Ilei's shoes, he would have predicted the strike, because he is the absolute best. A slow smile spreads across the captain's face. He likes that arrogance. He expects big things. Soon, a high-speed train screams through the dark. Speeding toward the capital, staring out at the stars, Luca slowly drifts off. He slept, his mind reflected on the exhausting mission. His thoughts drifted to Ileigh, Lillian, and her dream city. Then nightmares returned, Lillian's brutal execution at the hands of Ileigh. Her ultimate hero. Now, Luca realized a truly devastating truth. His own presence had forced Ileigh to act, trapping them. Though mourning them, he clung to one fact: he saved Eli. Back in the capital, the exhausted pair were placed in recovery capsules. They stood completely alone as the only two recruits to receive the prestigious 7th ranked Crossed Sword Medal of Honor. Later, overlooking the sprawling city, Luca met Eli to ask him. Bitter irony, he pointed out the mockery of their medals. Luca admitted he never expected Lillian to die under Eli's watch. Eli stared blankly at the horizon, admitting he would have fought back. No chance if only Luca had not been there. His family loved the medal, despite their dangerous Romani connections. Then Eli quietly suggested that Luca should quit being a soldier. That made Luca think of the entire battalion Eli threw away. Trapped, Eli confessed his family forced this life on him. He whispered that it would have been much better if he died instead of Lillian. Crash, Luca drove a sharp fist right into Eli's stomach. As Eli doubled over groaning, Luca warned him to watch his mouth. He coldly reminded his friend that broken organs can always be replaced. Luca turned away, cursing his own helplessness in the face of tragedy. He muttered that even with more strength, nothing would have changed. Nothing. Eli asked what Luca did, but received only silence. Looking at him, Luca knew Eli was far too soft to kill. Knowing this, Luca slowly opened his hand, letting go of the metal. It fell to the stone floor, shattering into countless tiny pieces. Gone, his loyalty to this corrupt empire was now completely dead. Soon after, Eli announced he was finally heading back home after 4 years. Before parting ways, Luca asked him about Lillian's failed escape attempt. Eli revealed she was desperately fleeing a forced marriage built on money. He explained the cruel terms her family had agreed to for cash. Lillian was to be raised as the replacement for a dead wife. Staggering, the horrible truth of her life left Luca stunned. He finally understood the lifelong torment she endured, which Eli confirmed. Only Commander Claude had ever shown her any real human kindness. Luca realized Claude was actually trying to introduce him to her. Laughter. Suddenly, Eli burst into a fit of dark giggles. He admitted they had completely fooled Claude with a massive lie. They claimed Luca was the Centurion's son, and Claude bought it. The lie worked because everyone knew how much the Heimlas favored him. Plus, Eli belonged to the wealthy Castoria family. Eli revealed Claude believed a pregnancy would finally buy her freedom. The absurd, desperate plan left Luca completely speechless and confused. He realized that even though Ileighh was his friend, he was totally capable of lying. And even killing his own men to get what he wanted. Yet, after this realization, Luca's deep trust in Ileighh remained completely unshaken. Later on, Luca meets up with Quinlan, who welcomes him as a decorated war hero. In the room, the instructor congratulates him on the medal, even though both know this visit is just to keep tabs on him for the Centurion. Luca quickly brushes off the achievement, saying a minor rank 7 medal is nothing. Compared to the instructor's legendary history, he then brings up that the Centurion's commander sent him here specifically to learn how to manage subordinates, which thoroughly amuses Quinlan. The seasoned teacher asks if Luca's men disobeyed him, but Luca defends them instantly, calling them excellent soldiers, with a Knowing Smile, the instructor processes this defense and points out the real issue. Luca is simply way too soft. Unfazed by the critique, Luca explains. He prefers taking big risks alone instead of using his comrades as meat shields. And they still managed to survive, but Quinlan completely disagrees with that logic, warning Luca that throwing himself onto the front lines only overloads his brain. Burning through critical energy he should be using to strategically command his unit. This raises the critical question, should he just use his allies? Quinlan argues they should be choosing to sacrifice themselves rather than being actively sent to their doom. The old mentor reminds him how he helped Gilda and Gabriel, pointing out that both soldiers would gladly die to return the favor. That seems obvious to Luca. Quinlan then explains that a leader must build strong ties with subordinates while maintaining enough cold emotional distance to sacrifice them without hesitation whenever needed, but Luca strongly rejects that. He says he could never do that, which only makes Quinlan like him more. Calling Luca a good boy, now watch, because his secret to control is brutal. Be loved but never love them back. That is how you keep the power. Luca then asks how to handle the crushing weight of sacrificing others if his conscience gets eaten alive by sheer guilt. Hearing the heavy question, Quinlan delivers a cold response, just get used to it, otherwise you will never stand at the top. Hearing this, Luca stands up and resolves that he will try to be better at sacrificing his subordinates next time, smiling warmly. Quinlan approves of this response, praising him once more. By the very next day, Luca is waiting out in the open on a massive transport platform, keeping his eyes focused straight ahead. Back in his room earlier, Luca received an unexpected order from Captain Heimlas to depart immediately for Accretia Academy. The captain explains that sending their best soldier is tradition and that Ali turned it down to stay home instead. Luca realizes that Ali is still deeply struggling with what happened recently, but Captain Heimlas is not having it, warning him that he clearly does not understand noble society yet. He cannot act this way if he expects to join the prestigious Castoria family. Accepting the warning, Luca takes the mission. Heimlas promises to send a guide, confident that the young soldier will actually enjoy the experience. Soon, departure day arrives. Just as the memory fades, a massive transport craft touches down right in front of him. Stepping out of the ship, the guide stared coldly at Luca, ordering him inside. Once Luca entered, he found her sitting there, arms crossed, watching him closely. But when Luca tried to introduce himself, she cut him off with a curt rejection of formalities. Her sharp attitude made Luca wonder if she was a noble his own age. He asked if she was indeed the guide sent by the captain, receiving a reply dripping with disdain, without any hesitation. Luca called her Miss of the Castoria family, completely shocking her. Her immediate reaction was to ask how he discovered her true identity. Luca explained it was a guess. Only someone from that family would ignore orders so openly. He deduced she was the centurion's daughter sent to test him. A faint smile appeared as he imagined carrying that surname. He imagined himself carrying that surname. Then he confronted the girl, stating he knew exactly who gave the orders she was following. Introducing herself as Giselle Castoria, she warned Luca not to act so coddled. With his back turned to her, Luca began to apologize for any possible offense. But right in the middle of his apology, he suddenly stopped himself. He remembered he had not survived so much just to bow down. With a sigh, Luca leaned back, stating the chief would understand his position. Right after, he proposed they simply follow their orders. Giselle guides and Luca obeys. He asked if that was fine, turning her face away. Giselle also leaned back in her seat, remaining silent. Moments later, the craft took off, flying across the futuristic city. Soon the transport landed on a platform, and they disembarked in silence. Ahead, Giselle ordered Luca to follow her to his dormitory. But along the way, something striking caught the newcomer's attention. An imposing statue stood along the path, at the monument's base. An inscription greets Emperor Accretia, the father of the nation. Looking upward, the newcomer finally realizes exactly where he is. Before him stands Accretia Academy, a place only known from the news. Their arrival draws curious looks from a group of students. As they walk, the others notice his uniform, identifying him as an imperial guard. Suddenly, a white-haired student shoves another boy out of the way. The shoved boy falls hard, landing right at the newcomer's feet. The bully sneers that it is a complete waste of a good implant. Giselle turns to the newcomer, asking why he is still standing there. She immediately scolds him for not wearing colorful civilian clothes, explaining that training soldiers do not need them. From a distance, a couple watches as Giselle complains about having to follow the academy rules. Suddenly, a young man named Felix appears with a friendly wave. He approaches, expressing his happiness to see the newcomer, thinking he would not show up. Right away, Luca introduces Felix to Giselle and asks for a moment alone with his colleague. Promptly, she agrees to wait. Once Giselle steps away, Felix quickly hugs Luca, whispering that the rumors about the Centurion's special fondness for him are true. He speculates that the captain wants to make the recruit his son-in-law, but he completely laughs off the idea as pure nonsense. Even the thought of becoming Heimko's son-in-law makes him realize it's impossible. They wouldn't survive a single day together. Instead, he reveals his own deal, getting adopted in exchange for watching over Kenyuan during his stay, walking away from their guide. Felix quietly asks if he has had any body modifications done yet. Then a small object marked 001 is slipped into his hand. Feeling the item in his palm, he looks genuinely surprised by it. Soon, Felix and the group say goodbye, mentioning how popular soldiers are around this academy. Standing next to Giselle again, the recruit realizes that this intel is pretty solid. It'll make blending in much easier. Specifically, he learned about his new living quarters, marked by a special symbol carved into the wall. It's a place reserved for low-level sector commoners and nobles who lost their fortunes. But this doesn't bother him at all, and his determined expression remains totally fixed. Walking toward his new home, he realizes that a strict hierarchy exists everywhere. Still, where's the fun? If things were too easy, they step inside to check the room. A robotic assistant shows off the lodging, which looks absolutely grand. It feels like a palace. Placing his hand on a table, he asks if bankrupt elites really live here. Finally, he drops down into a chair, reminding himself this is the finest academy in the Empire. Giselle stands before him and confirms this is his assigned space. Next, she hands over her direct number for emergencies, which makes him question why she seems so cold. She simply says she is following orders, showing she takes her duty very seriously. Watching her walk off, he murmurs that he will likely never call. And she coldly replies that she expects nothing less, but then she stops and gives him one crucial warning. She tells him to avoid the dormitory leader at all costs, which immediately hooks his interest. Giselle explains that this girl is the most problematic student around. Right on cue, a mysterious girl walks down the hall, now alone. In his quarters, the recruit wonders why she gave that warning. Just then, a chime cuts him off. The door slides open, revealing a girl who introduces herself as Barbara, the dorm leader. Yes, the exact person Giselle warned him about. In response, he formally introduces himself as a trainee for the Imperial Guard. His cybernetic eye immediately scans her. Up close, greeting her, he notices she is sizing him up, eyeing his plain clothes and lack of a noble name. Recalling the warnings, he keeps things basic and says he just got here. As they chat, Barbara finds out he is from the lower sectors, sounding highly impressed that a commoner made the cut. He returns the compliment, saying leading this dorm is no small feat. either which brings a bright smile to her face, observing her. She worked hard, incredibly hard in fact, to reach her current rank. Gesturing for him to follow, she explains that showing him around is her official duty. He suddenly realizes she has had almost no free time at all. Just running between busy classes and her bath, watching her walk away right now. He can tell she is highly efficient. Later, at the massive academy main building, both he and Giselle step inside to face the busy central hall. They immediately draw every single eye with a pretty sharp glare. Giselle silently studies her companion for a quick moment. She then announces that on her father's direct orders, they will attend classes together. For an entire week, suddenly a very familiar voice calls out her name. He turns and spots Barbara approaching, offering a casual hello. Without hesitation, the noble sharply orders her leave. Shrinking back slightly, the leader replies she only wanted to say hi. Giselle turns away, firmly repeating that she has absolutely nothing to say. To her, she quickly drags him along, warning him not to be late for class. Even as he is led away, he can't help but look back at poor Barbara. Standing all alone, her sad posture is honestly such a painful contrast to her usual confident persona. Turning his head, he leaves the hole scene behind with a serious expression, asking about their pretty strained relationship. Giselle simply replies they entered the academy at the same time. Still confused, he remembers Giselle's earlier warning about her as they walk down the hall, deciding to ignore the rumor mill for now. He focuses on his goal of becoming a noble within 2 months. Later, while sitting on a hallway bench waiting for classes to begin, he idly spins a small object to pass the time. Suddenly, a random student confronts him directly, demanding to know his business. With Miss Giselle, the kid's angry face totally betrays his obvious crush. Deciding to tease him a bit, the guard mocks his feelings, which instantly makes the student absolutely furious. In a flash, the guard grabs his wrist and twists it forward, drawing a sharp cry of pain. He quickly regrets taking out his own frustrations on this random kid and lets go. With teary eyes, the defeated student asks once more if they really have no connection to Giselle. Now sitting together, the guard tries to ask a question, but the boy stubbornly asks why he should even bother answering him, striking a deal. The guard offers to tell Giselle he is a pretty nice guy for knowing the real reason behind her hatred. Opening up, the student explains it was not always like this, blaming their rivalry on a curse. He specifies that the curse belongs to Barbara, noting that dangerous incidents with hacked androids follow her everywhere. Although the guard doubts it is her fault, the student insists that the strangest part is how Barbara keeps actively seeking out new friendships despite the danger. He further reveals she only became dorm leader because nobody else wanted that exhausting, thankless job. At that exact moment, he points down the hallway toward Barbara, who is a group of classmates corners Barbara. Suddenly, one girl dumps a drink over her head, soaking her clothes. The bullies quickly surround her, while the girl who did it mockingly sneers that it was just a total accident. She then offers to wash the wet clothes, but Barbara politely declines, wanting to chain. In her room, the young woman spins, asking her friends if they heard this blatant rejection. Her face darkens, instantly demanding that Barbara hand over her uniform right now. Barbara's hands shake as she grips her wet shirt, completely paralyzed by fear. Nearby, the two watch. Luca suddenly realizes something similar has happened before, explaining why Barbara desperately needed a shower the day they met. Blade in hand, he figures the poor girl is lucky he is around. Irritated and in a terrible mood, he prepares to throw his daggers. With a swift, clean strike, Luca shatters the cup, making her scream in fright. Luca orders her to back off. He makes no gender distinction in a fight. Terrified by his direct threat, the bullies scramble back. Luca steps right between them, creating a solid wall, still completely surprised by His rescue, the dorm leader softly calls his name, Luca. Turns back slightly, keeping his guard up, with the situation now resolved. Barbara finally whispers thanks, he just grins, but internally Luca wonders if his closeness to her will now make him a prime target. Another student warns him that the bully's real name is Callus Akano. Leaving him to face the absolute wrong person, Luca shrugs, saying he does not care about her family's power or influence. The boy explains that the Kano family runs a brutal gang downstairs. Knowing their thugs are likely already hunting him, shaking with fear. The boy explains that Callisa targeted Barbara because her boyfriend got cursed. Luca quietly processes this information, absorbing what he has just heard. Their private conversation is quickly cut short by Giselle's unexpected arrival. She approaches them with a look of pure disdain, spying an opportunity. Luca teases the boy, telling him to confess his true feelings. Stuttering, the boy backs away, saying he prefers admiring from afar. As he begs Luca to talk him up and flees, watching him run, Giselle remarks that Luca has already made a friend, he reveals. The boy is Enrico Lacan. Giselle admits Enrico creeps her out, feeling like his eyes are constantly watching her from somewhere. Hearing this, Luca knows he will never change her opinion of him. Later, an angry instructor confronts Luca, demanding to know if he drew a deadly weapon against a classmate. Meanwhile, director Guide Albern tells him to relax, knowing how stifling the academy gets. Facing him, Luca calmly nods along with the gentle warning. The director compares Luca to a wild wolf dropped among sheep. Luca replies that the problem is the sheep do not act like they will get bitten. Guide clears his throat, warning that while the students look harmless, some of them are actual monsters hiding in sheep's clothing. Guy warns him that these academy beasts are way more terrifying than wolves. Handing back Luca's weapon, Guy tells him to stay sharp, and Luca promises he will. But as our hero walks away, he realizes his true focus lies elsewhere. Forget the academy's beasts, his real mission is uncovering the dark truth about everything. The witch's curse, now deep in the dark woods behind the gym, he walks alone. Luca braces himself for the storm, moving quietly down the overgrown trail. Word about Barbara is already out, meaning those cursed machines will hunt him next. He freezes, a heavy, strange presence is creeping closer now. An unknown voice cuts through the trees, demanding to know if he is indeed Luca. The fresh recruit, then a hostile figure, steps directly into his path. The guy sneers, mocking Luca for being discovered by some bottom-tier trash. He and his crew warn him that Callista's moves violated Kano family rules. Smiling nastily, the thug tries to bait Luca, mocking his background, calling him nothing but a weak trainee from the Imperial Garden. Luca doesn't even blink, calmly asking if they honestly think they can win. The leader tries to play nice, offering him one single chance to beg. Luca just shoots back a cold threat, walk away now with your organs intact. Too late, furious, the thug prepares to strike back. He lunges forward, throwing a massive, heavy punch right at Luca's face. Luca actually respects the form, not a bad strike, honestly. The guy screams at him to dodge, but Luca stands his ground. Out of nowhere, a security patrol robot rolls up, offering assistance. The thugs instantly freeze up. Why on earth is a patrol out here? Spooked by the machine, the leader decides to call off the beatdown. They run, fleeing into the dark, swearing they will finish this. None of them are dumb enough to pick a fight with a security bot. Luca immediately rejects the help, coldly commanding the robot to leave. Error, the command fails and the machine starts glitching. It keeps repeating that it cannot comply. Something is seriously wrong here. The retreating thugs stop and watch, utterly confused by the malfunctioning bot. Suddenly, red light, the sensor flashes a warning. With terrifying, inhuman speed, the robot lunges straight at the gang. It tears through the first guy instantly, leaving his friend covered in blood. Terror, the leader stumbles backward, utterly paralyzed. He looks to Luca as the machine targets the next victim. The thug screams as the killer machine leaps straight for his throat. But in the nick of time, Luca intercepts with a brutal kick. The impact sends the metal beast crashing back. On the dirt, the thug gasps. He screams that Barbara's curse is real, but Luca just looks down, telling him that a student shouldn't believe in fairy tales. Right on cue, the machine locks onto Luca and charges again. Luca notices the engine is screaming. It's running at maximum capacity, meaning whoever is behind this knows exactly how dangerous he really is. As the robot stands back up, Luca realizes this is no simple glitch. This is a targeted assassination, and someone else is pulling the strings. He was moving like a puppet. Grinning, Luca braced himself to finally have some real fun. The battle was on. Luca quickly leaped to the side, dodging a sudden strike. He dodged the strike. In that instant, Luca realized the android's movements were surprisingly clean despite being awkward, as if it ran a highly advanced combat program. Even surrounded by several machines, Luca felt absolutely zero pressure. This was too easy. He seriously needed a real challenge to test his skills. So Luca lunged forward, planting a brutal kick straight into the chest of one android. But during the clash, he spotted a strange flaw in his opponent. It was totally different from standard models. Facing the oncoming threat, Luca just laughed. He openly mocked it, telling the machine to actually try and exceed his expectations. Luca leaped right onto its shoulders, saying this weak effort would never work. Using that momentum, Luca brought the android down with a single, crushing blow. He asked how the machine expected to get any stronger while getting so distracted. As the machine lay broken, a sudden retreat request flashed from the wreckage. It beeped from the wreckage before shutting down, seeing the final opponent fall. Luca sighed way too fast. This did not satisfy him at all. Absolutely not enough. Meanwhile, the leader of the enemy group quickly fled. Too slow, watching them disappear, Luca muttered that it was a real pity. But wait, security drones suddenly swarmed the sky, pinning him in blinding spotlights. Later on, Luca sat alone, right outside one of the massive academy buildings. After the wild incident, the security battalion demanded his full cooperation. Inside the tense interrogation room, investigator Jillian Campbell was ready to talk. She declared the culprit was inside the academy and everyone was under investigation. When asked if the attacker could have come from the lower sectors, Campbell immediately shut it down, explaining that bypassing their firewalls was completely impossible. Luca then questioned why a mere trainee like him was being dragged into this investigation. The investigator looked at him, replying that it was because of his unique abilities. Specifically, his rare ability to wield Archivictima. Seeing Luca's sudden reaction, Campbell decided to drop another bomb, revealing a highly classified detail. Users of that power are kept on a special watch list, and his teacher held the answers. As soon as she said that, the face of his instructor flashed in his mind. Kinyuan, Luca could not help but wonder who his instructor really was. Shortly after, Giselle confronted him, demanding to know what had happened. She asked why he accepted her father's orders after she warned him to stay away. Without even looking at her, Luca spoke with complete calm. He explained he could never stand by while a defenseless person was mistreated. Hearing this, Giselle asked if he would really make the same choice again. Luca confirmed he would have no other choice, so she suggested a new plan. She suggested talking to Kalisa Kononov, hoping a simple deal would settle everything. In response, Luca stared in silence, trying to figure out her game. He wanted to know why Giselle was so desperate to fix this issue herself. Her sudden confidence clearly came from knowing she had control over Kalisa. With that figured out, Luca finally agreed to go and speak with her. Smiling, Luca added that he would highly prefer not to attract the chief's attention. On top of that, he mentioned there was one more little detail they needed. He had to check personally. Inside, Kalista Kanonov was already defending herself, claiming Barbara attacked her boyfriend first. Sitting right across from her, Luca asked the ultimate question. Did she send her boyfriend to target Barbara? Silence. Pointing to the board, Luca laid out the facts. Her boyfriend used their family crest for revenge, just like before. Sitting with everyone at the table, Luca asked Callista directly. Did she just need an excuse? Callista stood up instantly. She screamed at him to shut up, desperately denying everything. Immediately, Giselle stepped in and ordered Callista to calm down. With a cold expression, Giselle cut her off, saying that was enough. Next, she asked if Callista would really ignore his claims. Then she asked Luca for a few private minutes. He agreed. He stepped outside. His suspicions were finally confirmed. Giselle held total control. Why didn't she stop Callista earlier? It would have been incredibly easy for someone in her position. She had 2 whole months at the academy, yet nothing. Soon Giselle walked out, clearly exhausted by the drama. She complained about her rival. She thought Luca wanted peace. Luca explained he was only testing a theory. He wanted to see how she controlled her people. Detective, she asked. Luca shrugged. Real investigators were already on it. But he admitted he was impressed by her commanding authority. She silenced Callista instantly. Giselle explained her family name holds weight. In noble society, her words simply could not be ignored by anyone. Without hesitating, Luca asked if she ordered the hit. Giselle frowned, demanding to know what nonsense he meant. He replied that using Barbara as a tool made perfect sense. Using a valuable piece as a tool was classic noble behavior. Oh, she did not like that. Giselle grabbed his collar, telling him to watch it. Luca didn't blink, asking if her metal parts scrambled her brain. Stunned, Giselle let go immediately and backed away. She muttered a quick apology before hastily turning to walk away. But first, she warned him to prepare for serious consequences. She was the prime suspect, but something still felt off. There was a strange tension in the air. He noticed her hand trembling, wondering why she was shaking so badly. Watching her go, he found her robotic reflexes utterly baffling. Later, Luca sat next to Barbara on a quiet bench. Nearby students watched them. Suddenly, she approached him. She offered a tray of sandwiches, begging him to eat. Confused, he asked why. Barbara softly explained her gratitude. She wanted to thank him for saving her from Callista. She asked to keep cooking for him. He prepared to decline. He wanted no misunderstandings. Dejected, she lowered her head. She stood there, completely silent by his side. Head down, she softly spoke up. Instead of denying it, she said she did not care about some silly misunderstanding. Did she actually like him, or was something seriously off here? He couldn't shake the feeling. Luca warned her right then. Talking to him was incredibly dangerous. Barbara simply muttered that she had no idea what to do, so Luca decided to test her. He revealed that Callista only bothered her because Giselle forced her hand. Giselle would absolutely never stop her relentless attacks until she finally got what she wanted. No shock at all, Barbara calmly admitted she knew everything. Luca pushed further. Did she actually know why Giselle hated her so damn much? Just like that, Barbara's entire face went cold. She asked why she would ever share that kind of secret with him. He deliberately provoked her, eager to see how she would react to the pressure. But as they spoke, that incredibly weird vibe from her just kept bothering him. Suddenly, Director Gid's warning about a wolf in sheep's clothing echoed in his mind. Looking at her cold reaction, Luca finally put the pieces together. Right here, the truth hits him. The wolf in sheep's clothing is Barbara. Later in his room, Luca used his communicator to report his latest encounter. On the other end, Investigator Campbell's hologram flickered to life. He confirmed Callista intentionally sent her ex after Barbara. Praising his sharp instincts, Campbell confirmed Luca was right. Callista staged everything just for a convenient cover story. Luca asked if the investigator would officially dig into this new suspect. Campbell shook his head. It was too risky with 6 active cases already. Besides, someone was already dead, and he just wanted to trap the killer. Luca pointed the finger directly at Barbara, suggesting they start there. But Campbell instantly brushed it off as a complete waste of time. A poor kid from the lower sectors could never control high-tech androids. Luca pointed out that the wealthy nobles did not have those limits. Campbell agreed the elites could easily mess with the production lines. Before hanging up, Campbell dropped one final, massive clue. He revealed that Barbara was actually sponsored by the Castoria family. That name left Luca completely speechless as the call finally ended. This was some incredibly heavy info, and he needed time to process it. The messy puzzle pieces were starting to align, yet something felt missing. Sick of chasing dead ends, Luca decided to go straight to the source. He would confront Giselle directly and get some real answers from her. Without wasting any time, he set out to put his plan into motion. Watching the busy training grounds, Elaine's warning about the desperate nobles echoed back. They had to prove their absolute worth or get tossed aside like trash. Luca eventually tracked Giselle down to a messy workshop, hard at work. It was a stark contrast to how aggressive she behaved during their first meeting. Spotting him near the door, Giselle immediately demanded to know why he was there. When Luca casually claimed he just wanted to visit her, she choked on her drink. Coughing, she told him to cut the nonsense and spill what he actually wanted. She was incredibly busy, but Luca simply told her to drop the lies. When questioned, Luca revealed he was officially invited to assist. Unfazed, Giselle simply reminded him of her position. She was the Centurion chief's daughter, but Luca revealed he knew her entire family. Sponsored Barbara was that the real reason Giselle wanted her kicked out. Giselle admitted it, she hated Barbara because of the curse. But when Luca confronted her about their friendship, she tried to flee. Luca stated security viewed the android incident as pure malice. He saw it as a clear case of malicious intent, pointing directly to Giselle as the prime suspect, making her protest that she was a victim too. Unshaken, Luca replied that it was a common tactic for culprits to pose as. Besides, Giselle clearly had every tool needed to pull off the crime. Seeing her panic, Luca calmly told her to quiet down. He clarified that he did not directly suspect her and asked for help. He wanted to know everything she could tell him. Right then, Barbara appeared in the hallway, greeting him and saying she had been searching for him. She worried when he was not in his spot. Luca immediately wondered how she located him, since he was absolutely certain nobody had followed him. Her face was completely untroubled. Luca quietly wondered how she managed to stop him from getting any of the information in just 10 short minutes. He coldly told Barbara to wipe that smile off her face, and honestly, it is pretty annoying. Faced with the harsh accusation, Barbara questioned his words, trying to justify herself by claiming she truly liked him for saving her from Calissa before she could explain any misunderstanding. Luca violently hurled a chair, which shattered into pieces. Witnessing this madness, Giselle asked him what he was doing. With a terrifyingly dark look, Luca replied that until now, he was only trying to kill time, but he was already completely sick of it. He turned to Barbara, accusing her of playing him. Behind the debris, a crouched woman called for Barbara. Luca's expression changed completely, stating that Barbara had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. His cold gaze swept across the room, leaving Giselle completely frozen. Luca then walked right past Giselle, who quickly called out to him, saying she would leave the delicious food there for him to enjoy later. She then turned and began walking away as Luca silently watched before she could leave. Barbara caught up from behind, grabbing her shoulder with a sweet smile. She hugged Giselle tightly, saying it was wonderful to see her again, before whispering something dark in Giselle's ear. Barbara laughed softly before leaving. She waved goodbye, promising to see them around. Once she was gone, Luca and Giselle were left standing in the ruined room, suddenly. Giselle completely collapsed straight to her knees on the floor, while Luca stood silently beside her. Watching her collapse, a sigh of realization escaped Luca. Everything was now clear, the real culprit and their dark connection. Approaching her trembling form, Luca simply called out her name. But she quickly begged him not to ask her anything else, advising Luca to just live normally at the academy until the day he finally left. Surrounded by the heavy wreckage, Giselle ended their tense conversation with a plea for silence. A holographic call from Luca to Giselle flashes on the screen, but it goes completely unanswered. Luca recalls reporting this mess to the chief centurion. Ever since that incident, Giselle had been going out of her way to avoid him. But Himalas reacted in the most unexpected way, completely shifting the board. He left the entire case in Luca's hands to handle as he saw fit. It was strange, since the Imperial Guards could easily wrap this up. Especially with Giselle involved, and Luca, he was just a trainee. Still, the sheer weight of this responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. Duty demanded obedience, putting him under intense pressure as he accepted the mission. He knew the expectations on him were astronomical, back in the present. The call gets rejected. Luca can only stare as the connection dies. He instantly suspects Barbara, but logically speaking, that would be completely impossible. How could a lower sector student control the Academy's advanced androids? But wait, nobles definitely have the power to override them. Which means Kalisa likely used Barbara to track down and target Giselle. As Luca searches for another way to reach Giselle, someone else interrupts. It's Enrico, running up with pure excitement to ask for a status update. "Did you speak well of me to Giselle?" he asks. Luca just smiles. He plays along, perfectly exploiting this useful idiot, right on cue. Giselle makes her feelings brutally clear. Meeting him face to face, she lays it out. She has zero interest, admitting his very presence makes her sick. She demands he stop following her, leaving him standing there in tears. Clutching a useless bouquet of flowers, Enrico runs off as Luca watches. After shamelessly using him, Luca makes a quiet promise to help him someday. But for now, he slips out of the shadows with a fresh plan. Stepping into view, Luca calls out to Giselle Castoria, stopping her cold. She snaps that she knew he was there, instantly threatening his career. "Threaten me to your father all you want," he says, "it won't help." He drops the bomb. He already informed Himalas about her involvement. Giselle shrieks in disbelief, but Luca's gaze remains ice cold. He calmly tells her he had absolutely no reason to protect her. She stumbles back, completely shattered, her entire reputation ruined in seconds. Her standing in the family is gone. White-hot rage consumes her. She grabs Luca by the collar, screaming that everything is his fault for showing up. Luca doesn't flinch. He offers her a lifeline in exchange for the truth. She laughs in his face. A deal with a lowly trainee plays. So Luca lines in. "What if I join the Castoria family soon?" he asks. As she gapes at him, Luca pushes the knife in deeper. Did she really think it was a coincidence she was assigned as his guide? He reveals his true status, a once-in-a-generation genius decorated with honor. He's got the full, undivided backing of the chief centurion himself. Luca promises to solve her problems, leaving her struggling to believe him. He lays out the play. Solving this case guarantees him more centurion backing. It builds his power, and they can both rise together. The hook is set. Slowly, Giselle steps closer to her new partner. She finally confessed to controlling the androids and creating Barbara's curse. They sat down together as Giselle began to tell her story. It turned out Barbara was actually someone Giselle trusted deeply. It started 3 years ago, driven by simple curiosity. She wanted to know who her family sponsored, meeting Barbara. Barbara seemed nice and highly skilled, but trouble quickly brewed. It started with petty jealousy when a boy approached popular Barbara. Terrified of losing her friend, Giselle acted fast. She used a machine disguised as an android to scare him. Giselle explained that she had hidden a recorder inside the machine. It was programmed to warn the boy off and lure him out at night. The prank backfired hard, leaving the boy badly injured. He left the academy from trauma, while a panicked Giselle hid everything. Because of the severe injury, Giselle soon found herself under investigation. But Barbara saw her messing with the machines. Barbara suggested Giselle pretend to be a victim to hide suspicion. Giselle used her repair privileges to install a strange chip. Without any warning, the modified android went completely wild. It attacked Giselle, making her the second victim of the incident. From that exact moment, the real curse began as Barbara changed. Barbara made bizarre demands, telling Giselle to keep her distance. She claimed she needed more victims to finish her plans. Giselle was utterly manipulated, trapped in a situation she could not fix. She was entirely in Barbara's grasp, with absolutely no escape. Suddenly, the feed glitched. Barbara's face flashed on screen. Her voice demanded to know if she told their secret. She called Giselle a traitor, leaving the poor girl in pain. Seriously, how did Barbara hack a device with maximum security? As a strange whining sound grew, they knew something was wrong. The loud, terrible noise was not coming from Giselle's screen. They had to escape. Now the drone was charging. An automated weapon nearby suddenly fired a deadly shot at them. The powerful blast hit Luca squarely, throwing them both violently backward. Quickly ducking behind a pillar, Luca struggled to catch his breath. He moved carefully toward the unconscious girl on the floor. Ripping a strip of cloth from his shirt, he tied it tight to stop the blood. The blast came from a drone, and direct combat was suicide. To make matters even worse, he did not carry a weapon. He only had a pocket knife, and nobody was around. The area was silent, too silent. Then his eyes hardened. He resolved to strike back directly against Barbara. He soon noticed Giselle waking up as she weakly asked if the shot hurt him. Wincing in pain, Luca nodded, right before more gunfire erupted. They scrambled desperately for cover behind the thick stone pillar. Luca cursed, wishing he knew the drone's position to fight back. A sudden idea strikes him. Luca calls out to Giselle, and she answers instantly. He quickly asks her for a mirror, desperately searching the reflection until the attack drone is finally exposed. Once spotted, Luca hurls his blade straight toward the metal target. The strike triggers a massive explosion that throws him backward. Suddenly, his communicator activates on its own. Confused, he tries to reach Giselle, who is standing just a few steps away. Giselle tries to use her own device as well, but nothing seems to work. Suddenly, Barbara's harsh voice crackles through the speaker, demanding immediate answers. She accuses Giselle of betrayal, screaming about all she did to protect her. When the name Luca drops from her lips, someone suddenly grabs Giselle's wrist. With a hard, decisive squeeze, Luca completely shuts off the noisy device to end the call. He angrily snaps that there is absolutely no reason to keep listening to that complete lunatic. Pulling her close, he insists they must find a safe hiding spot first. As they move out, Felix finally chimes in over the radio. He reports he just reached their spot, prompting Luca to ask about their specific orders. But the new ally admits he has been kept totally in the dark. Giselle is completely shocked by their conversation, asking if her father made these crazy decisions. When Felix heavily confirms it, the cold truth hits her incredibly hard. She is left completely speechless, realizing her own father has abandoned her here. While panic sets in for Giselle, Luca tries to keep a level head. Despite being the chief's daughter, she is still a civilian who risks their mission. Luca turns to Felix, leaving the silent noblewoman to her grim thoughts. Felix points to Luca's bleeding arm, asking if he is actually doing okay. But Luca quickly brushes the pain off, claiming the injury is absolutely nothing at all. Felix grins, saying that if he can handle it, they should keep moving forward. He asks if Luca can keep their pace, and Luca quickly reassures him. He reports their location, but you're not ready for the horror that strikes next. A sudden blinding shot tears straight through his mechanical arm, completely destroying it. They quickly scramble for cover, desperately trying to avoid a follow-up blast. Weapon ready, Luca knows the shooter is incredibly close, but there's no presence. The entire situation feels completely unnatural, as if their very own royal guards are targeting them. Felix openly doubts if Barbara actually possesses this kind of deadly, insane power. Out of nowhere, a creepy, unfamiliar voice proposes a quick chat. Luca is utterly shocked to recognize the shooter as the voice continues speaking. The shooter mocks them, noting that a headshot would have ended Felix's life right there. Luca snaps back, demanding to know if he realizes who he is crossing. The attacker laughs, stating he knows they are merely rookies in training. Since he has absolutely no time to waste, the shooter gets straight to his point. His order is clear, demanding they immediately hand over Giselle Castoria. Luca assumes this is a ransom kidnapping, but the attacker has different ideas. He explains that his princess wants her, making this deadly threat feel incredibly personal. Giselle stares at Luca, completely frozen with fear from the sudden strike. Luca stands paralyzed as the brutal scene unfolds right before his eyes. The cloaked sniper lifts Felix by the neck. Dangling him helplessly, the dangerous enemy slowly steps out, wearing his specialized combat suit completely hides his identity. Suddenly, Luca spots a strange red targeting. Laser aiming right down the path, the enemy's cloaking device had kept him totally invisible until now, facing this threat. Giselle grabs Luca's hand tightly, feeling the danger. Luca steps in front of her. "I will buy you time," he says. He instructs her to run as fast as she can on his signal. "Go now." Giselle tries to protest, but there is zero time to argue. Luca holds her and orders her to follow his plan. 3, 2, 1. They brace themselves for the perfect moment. "Go," Luca shouts, and Giselle sprints away. Luca immediately raises his gun, taking very precise aim to cover her escape. She vanishes into the shadows. Just moments later, the battle officially begins. Luca's bullets whiz right past the enemy. He fires again, instantly realizing that his opponent possesses insanely fast reflexes. The attacker casually tells him he has no interest in killing freshmen. Confused, Luca repeats the word. Freshmen, wondering if they actually look older. In a flash, the stranger warns Luca to keep his eyes on the fight if he actually wants to stay alive. Himself, the cadet realizes this kid is no rookie. He is a royal guard. The attacker reveals that Giselle is his actual target, and he plans to slaughter Luca first. Blown backward by the absolute force of a brutal strike, Luca knows he is done if this keeps up. How can he win this? Still falling through the air, he desperately tries to search for a quick solution. From this high vantage point, he quickly analyzes the enemy to make a plan. Suddenly, his eyes spot a metal glint on the ground, a knife, Felix's. Luca tosses his pistol, aiming it perfectly to strike that discarded blade on the floor. He snatches the knife, gripping it tight, ready to strike back. With a lightning-fast lunge, Luca drives his new blade straight forward. The metal clashes loudly against the opponent's guard. Surprised, the attacker asks if Luca uses RC combat arts. The opponent then dodges Luca's rapid strikes, quickly creating a comfortable distance between them. Retreating, the opponent praises his skills, declaring he will end this now. He says their little warm-up is officially over, and things are getting complicated, sensing the sudden, deadly shift in the killer's energy. Luca tightens his grip on the knife, staying completely on guard. Bleeding, he wonders why the man is hesitating. Is Giselle safe? His head is spinning, making focus extremely difficult. He absolutely must end this battle now. The killer warns him to step aside and not throw his young life away like that. Luca takes a deep breath. This monster must find all this highly amusing. Shaking off the pain, he decides his bloody wounds and the enemy's identity do not matter anymore. With that, Luca raises his blade, channeling his power. He unleashes a massive, desperate strike, only for it to fail. The killer praises his form, asking if he wants to serve the Empire. Looking Luca dead in the eye, he asks if he truly believes he is immortal. Luca replies with pure defiance, saying the Empire is one thing, blocking another crushing blow with his knife, which he had driven deep into the dry dirt. Luca adds, but your trashy attitude is a different story. Completely, and it's starting to annoy me. Hearing this, his opponent begins to laugh, remarking that such a rebellious spirit is not well regarded in the Empire before introducing himself as Rick Kaiser, a Republican. Dripping blood, Luca asks if he is a traitor, but Rick suggests that resistance fighters is a much more appropriate term. Luca just smirks, telling him he's barking too much, but Rick replies it's far more than a mere bark. With that, Rick floats up, surrounded by his raw energy. He then charges forward at blinding speed to strike Luca, who uses his bare hands to block Rick's fierce advance. From the sheer force of the impact, Luca's heavy armored hand begins to shatter. Charging in again, Rick attacks once more, instantly destroying Luca's other arm before grabbing him violently by the neck, telling him this is his last chance to beg for his life. Despite being completely pinned, Luca flashes a defiant smile. With that, Rick hoists him into the air using just one hand. Even at death's door, Luca still defiantly speaks his mind. After hearing him out, Rick tells him to give his regards to Kinyuan if he survives. The last thing Luca registers is the sickening sound of his neck snapping. The scene then cuts to the Imperial capital Army Hospital, where Felix wakes up in bed calling for Luca and crying out in pain. Sitting right beside him, Luca replies that of course it hurts. When trying to speak, especially with his neck, he explains that Felix's brain suffered severe damage from being choked out for too long, yet he considers Felix lucky. Luca recalls that Giselle arrived with 4 other guards, and without her rapid action, he would have been in critical condition himself. Himalis then approaches, telling Luca to stay calm and not get up. Sitting beside the bed to hear his subordinates report, Luca reports that Felix fulfilled his duty and fought to the bitter end, then prepares to give a full account of the events. After explaining the fight, Luca finishes his report, stating that is all. Himalis then reveals that Rick Kaiser's real name is Rick Silva, one of the Empire's most wanted criminals. Stunned, Luca listens as Himalis explains that some high-profile criminals are kept quiet, especially when corruption is involved. Luca then asks what he means by corruption inside their supposedly perfect empire. Realizing that Rick was not the only traitor, Himalis decides to tell Luca every single detail of the mission, revealing Operation Juliet, a 5-year plan to get close to the leadership of the anti-empire group known as Nemesis, while Himalis explains that Nemesis is far too organized for conventional methods. Luca asks if the operation failed simply because he did not capture Rick. Even without fully understanding, Luca hears Himalis reveal that the plan succeeded because they managed to successfully infiltrate their own allies into the very heart of Nemesis. Soon, Luca learns that Barbara is their undercover ally, recruited by the group as a hacker. Hearing that Barbara had been preparing for this for a long time to grab their attention, Luca clenches his fist in silence. With that, Luca concludes that all the sacrifices, from Felix's brain damage to the abuse Giselle suffered, were nothing but disposable pieces. When Luca asks if Giselle knows, Himalis says no, insisting that it is better she remains unaware. Himalis then asks Luca if he knows why. Himalia's words sink in, and that brutal term, disposable, keeps echoing inside Luca's head. Luca wonders if he is next, destined to be thrown away like trash before achieving anything. A digital screen pops up. He is ordered to read the document. Luca stares in dead silence. Then Himalia breaks the quiet. He welcomes Luca to the powerful Castoria family. The document is an official adoption declaration. It bears his name. Sometime later, Luca sits quietly by a sterile hospital bed. Felix lies there completely unconscious. Beside him, used treatment needles clutter the tray. Earlier, Himalia explained that validating the adoption documents would take quite a bit of time. He also received a brand new spinal implant, but once they finished the procedure, the doctor warned him to expect some pretty intense aching for a few days. Just as he prepares to walk out, Felix weakly calls to him from the bed. Without even looking back, Luca merely touches his own neck, signaling he has to go. He wishes his friend luck one last time, then steps out through the door. Back at the academy, Luca walks down the hall while other students keep watching him. A digital screen catches his eye, displaying a picture of Barbara, the witch. It is hard to wrap his head around the truth. She was actually a spy. An enemy spy, his nemesis. He recalls how she used to act around him. None of those warm moments felt fake. He freezes. Is he really just a pawn? He stares quietly out the window, wondering if his entire past was just a carefully manufactured plan. Was his childhood at the orphanage and meeting Quinlan really just a coincidence? Looking back at his time here, he wonders if he ever truly made his own choices. But even with those heavy doubts, he knows one thing for certain. He did not survive that dark pit alone. Clenching his fists, he takes a resolute step forward. Pushing those thoughts away, he tells himself there is absolutely no need to dwell on it. Turning away, Luca dismisses those heavy thoughts as mere fantasy. The captain was probably just testing his loyalty. Clenching his mechanical fist, he resolves that he will never let this massive chance slip away. He cannot let this slip. Outside the office door, he reminds himself this is his shot. This is a rare chance. Suddenly, the door opens and Quinlan greets him. Quinlan smiles warmly, welcoming him back and asking how his time at the academy went. As the instructor pours tea, Luca jokes it was almost too fun to leave. Quinlan sighs, expressing his deep regrets about what happened to poor Felix. He praises Felix as a brilliant recruit before sliding a steaming cup over to Luca. Luca looks down at his cup, secretly doubting the man's sincerity. Then Luca casually mentions that Rick sent his regards and is doing fine. Quinlan takes a slow sip of tea, repeating the name Rick Silva Nuns with a frown. He admits he never expected Rick to end up turning into a traitor. Luca remarks they seemed close, and Quinlan confirms they were skilled colleagues. But when pressed, Quinlan insists he would never maintain any contact with a wanted terrorist. Right then, Luca realizes he absolutely cannot report this conversation to the captain. Instead, he claims he came to Quinlan first because his life was on the line. The instructor eyes him curiously, asking why he even cares so much about Rick. Evading the question, Luca asks him to explain the mysterious combat arts of the Archie. Quinlan's eyes narrow as he demands to know what sparked this sudden interest. Luca calmly explains that the Empire keeps a classified watchlist of secret martial arts users. Of the technique explaining why Rick spared his life, the instructor stays quiet for a second, sipping his tea, before praising Luca for his sharp mind. He calls him Luca Castoria. Quinlan steps closer, looking right at the cadet. He says the boy knows way too much for a commoner. Luca just nods. The young man says he knows exactly what that implies. The instructor begins explaining. 200 years ago, the Empire faced its very first rebellion in history. The massive uprising was led by an immigrant advisor named Noel Muliska. He originally designed combat strategies for the Empire, but chose a different path. Realizing a direct fight was impossible, Noel fought back using pure intelligence. This tactical shift birthed the Archie Victima style, but Quinlan corrects him. It is actually called Archie's combat arts. Luca processes this heavy truth. The style he learned actually originated from a notorious imperial traitor. Quinlan notes that with these arts, the rebels successfully resisted the imperial forces. They kept passing the style down, handpicking only the most suitable vessels. Luca realizes this style is incredibly practical when you are completely cornered. He figures the style was built for civilians who needed to adapt fast. People who had no formal military training. Quinlan nods, confirming his theory. The veteran instructor adds that even during a massive Imperial Purge campaign, Noel and his closest allies still managed to slip away completely untouched. They scattered across the territories, recruiting highly throwaway soldiers to fight. They raided outposts constantly. It did not matter if these recruits got caught. They would simply cut off the tail, letting the leaders escape unharmed. Luca can easily picture it, without any unique military gear or uniforms. These rebels would melt right into the civilian crowds without a trace. They could fight barehanded using Arky's combat arts, then vanish into thin air. This explains why Captain Rick gave him a real fighting chance to survive. It also explains why the Empire keeps a secret blacklist of these martial artists. But when Luca asks how the Empire tracked down these hidden rebels, Quinlan cuts him off with a chilling answer: they just killed everyone. There was zero time to separate innocent townspeople from the active traitors. Entire provinces were completely wiped off the map to extinguish the rebellion. The Empire stopped the uprising, but several Archie-style users still slipped through. Luca wonders if this is the forbidden history of the Empire. Quinlan answers. They do not actively hide the truth, but they definitely do not share it. This hidden past boils down to three main points. First, Noel Muliska betrayed them. Second, the brutal massacres that followed. And third, a massive revelation is coming. Quinlan, the elite Imperial Guard instructor himself, has mastered this forbidden combat style. Luca asks if the captain brought him here because he suspected treasonous ties. Quinlan congratulates the boy, confirming the captain's dark suspicions are entirely correct. He challenges the young man to produce any proof linking him to Nemesis. Do that, and Quinlan might just grant him a tiny bit of mercy. Luca is completely baffled by the veteran instructor's weirdly calm attitude. He flat out states that Quinlan has no real connection to these rebels. But Quinlan warns him that the captain sees things very differently. He advises the cadet to search for his hidden marks down below. Sectors, Quinlan reassures Luca that checking those areas will definitely pay off. And Luca begins to wonder just how much Captain Gemelas already knew before sending him here. To speak with Quinlan, as Luca turns to leave, he promises to report back. He will report everything to the Centurion captain. The door opens. Quinlan bids him farewell, leaving Luca to walk alone across a massive high-rise walkway under the burning sunset. The camera pulls back, revealing the sprawling Imperial city drowning in dusk as Luca stops. Gazing out from the edge of the building, a wave of pure frustration washes over him. It feels like mockery. They are just playing with his desperate situation. He is a mere pawn in their massive game, and honestly, his chances look pretty slim. Caught right in the middle of their deadly crossfire, Luca has to admit the truth. It is getting harder and harder to read Quinlan, but he needs to find out who the man is. Searching for files on Noel Muliska fails. Luca knows he cannot keep sinking in the dark like this. His only move left is to trust Quinlan's advice and start digging. He is forced to hunt for any physical trace of his instructor in the dark lower sectors, which reminds him of Commander Gemelas's strict order to spy on the man. A suspect who roams free, pointing Luca toward his secrets. Quinlan explicitly told him to investigate the lower sectors, assuring him it would definitely help. But following that suspicious lead means stepping right into the absolute belly of the beast. The lawless lower sectors where the terrorist group Nemesis operates. This entire situation feels like a highly dangerous, high-stakes loyalty test designed by the Empire. No turning back now. He prepares to follow the trail left behind. But deep down, Luca knows surviving this will not be easy. He will need absolute, razor-sharp focus just to survive and make it back home alive. Report time. Luca stands before Commander Gemelas to deliver his findings. He admits that his target actively provoked him during their highly intense and personal conversation. Then he exposes the secret connection between Quinlan and Rick Kaiser. He demands to know why they let such a high-risk suspect run around so freely. Still, he promises to obey orders, even if the truth is kept hidden. Commander Gemelas stares him right in the eye and declares his absolute trust in him. Then he reveals that the orders to watch Luca came from the absolute top. They believe Luca is the actual key to finding and destroying Nemesis. At that, Luca questions why they would keep such a highly dangerous man as an instructor. Gemelas explains it is the only way to keep their eyes on Quinlan. Gemelas asks if that clears things up, but Luca is still highly suspicious of him. Quinlan has perfect self-control and has not shown a single weakness yet. Gemelas urges him to keep pushing, noting how many others have failed. Luca is different. He is the only soldier making any real progress. Here is the kicker: the commander says Quinlan actually likes him. Taking advantage of this very rare moment, the young trainee makes an incredibly bold request. A sharp drop. Sometime later, a transport capsule plunges through the sky. Inside the capsule, Commander Gemelas and Luca sit silently, facing each other during the descent. The commander breaks the silence, asking the young soldier if he is nervous. During the high-speed ride, Luca admits he would be lying if he said he was calm. He remembers his request to Gemelas, which granted him free access across sectors. Lower sectors, Luca even lands official clearance to carry a weapon and secure funding for this investigation. This grants him elite privileges, including classified intel meant only for superiors, but even so. This case is deadly. He must proceed with extreme caution. Inside the transport capsule, Luca makes a dark confession to Gemelas. He fears getting killed for knowing too much. Gemelas agrees completely. If the brass covers this up, Luca is a dead man. Even so, the commander vows to use his power to protect him. Immediately, Gemelas hands over a special card carrying his seal. With this in hand, Luca knows his life is decided. The commander holds all the cards now, speaking of his unconventional style. Gemelas instructs the young man on how to greet his new siblings. Luca offers to play a part, but the answer is incredibly simple. Just be himself, act as a wake-up call for the others. Still, that word motivation leaves Luca feeling deeply uneasy about this request. He cannot fathom the commander's true game, but he has to play. Following the rules is his only shield in this dangerous noble house. As they near the drop point, the captain signals their arrival. The transport capsule plummets fast toward a sprawling, metallic fortress. Looking out, Gemelas admits that even he hates a place like this. Yet this cold estate is exactly where the commander grew up. The capsule touches down smoothly on the high arrival platform. Together, they step inside a massive, beautifully decorated luxury hall. Gemelas tells Luca to rest before the formal meetings begin. From his window upstairs, Luca watches the crowd gathering below. Gemelas stands right at the center, commanding everyone's absolute attention. Luca mutters that this hierarchy is just like the lower sectors. Is this glittering high life really what he wanted? Probably not. A sudden noise at his bedroom door cuts his thoughts short. He turns to see Giselle, who notes he is officially a Castoria now. Standing before him, Giselle apologizes for her earlier, dramatic outburst. She says it was unacceptable for her family. Luca shrugs. He replies that any normal civilian would react that way under pressure. She then reveals she visited Felix, but he did not even recognize her. Luca tells her she has no reason to feel guilty about that. Felix was just doing his duty, and Luca claims he is not trying to comfort her. With a soft smile, Giselle compares him to a bright, burning fire. She asks if he remembers her promise to help him inside the family. He nods, knowing she is ready to back him up. That is exactly how a noble should claim what is rightfully theirs. Stepping back, the young woman offers him some valuable information as payment. Giselle brings up a glowing holographic screen on her terminal. She notes that her father is not the type to offer free favors. A projection of her brother's appears, and she warns him to be careful. His arrival puts massive pressure on them, and the Castorias play dirty. Unlike Luca, the other potential successors in this soldier lineage are deeply flawed. As an elite soldier, the newcomer represents a massive, undeniable threat to them. He quickly agrees. It makes total sense for the brothers to feel threatened by the risk of losing their status to an outsider like him. Then, he unexpectedly directly questions her about her own position, causing her expression to shift for a split second. He asks if she has zero interest in becoming the next family head. But she carefully avoids giving a straight answer. The heiress simply claims that she has no desire to join the struggle, but she won't stay passive if she is provoked. She then warns that he cannot afford to just stand around either. She advises him to seize every opportunity. Hearing this, the young soldier smiles, offering her that exact same advice as her new brother. Giselle opens her mouth in pure shock. Immediately after, she bursts into loud laughter at his incredibly bold response. Once she calms down, she asks if she can count on his loyalty should her time ever come. With a smirk, he agrees to support her as long as his own safety is guaranteed. She extends her hand to seal the deal, officially treating him as an ally while wishing her new brother the best. But then, she warns this is the only time she will ever address him like that. He agrees, replying that hearing it more than once would honestly feel pretty strange. Suddenly, bells chime in the background to announce dinner, right before the massive family crest. The two face each other with their new alliance officially sealed. Inside the grand dining hall, the rest of the family is already gathered around the massive table. The doors swing open and the newcomer steps inside, walking side by side with the family head's daughter. Seated before them are the second son, Joel, the eldest, Nicholas, and the head's powerful wife, Eva Castoria. The cold matriarch addresses the newcomer, welcoming him while noting that she has already heard quite a lot about his achievements. Luca's face remains completely blank as he locks eyes with the woman running the family. Finally, Eva bids everyone to sit, mentioning her husband will arrive shortly. Giselle nods before he can sit down. Giselle discreetly whispers to him not to let her mother get under his skin, since their father won't protect him from family infighting. Right on cue, Himalayas enters the room, and everyone at the table falls completely silent to receive their leader. The intimidating head of the house simply commands everyone to begin. Before eating, Himalayas opens the dinner with a rigid, formal toast to the legendary protector of humanity, concluding his short speech by thanking the Empire's very first emperor. Soon, everyone else at the table silently starts eating. While enjoying the meal, the young soldier closely observes their overall behavior. He soon realizes that he is drawing every single eye at the table. The scene flashes back to just a few minutes earlier, when he and Giselle were still lingering in the hallway. Back then, Giselle explained that the brothers feeling so pressured only proves their desperate ambition to rule. She also confirms that the pair have likely memorized every single scrap of intel regarding their brand new family member. She reveals that Nicholas became a connected bureaucrat solely because of his complete lack of real combat talent. As for Joel, despite being less skilled, he still has a much stronger shot at succession since he is an active soldier, supported by their relatives. Finally, she warned Luca to be extremely careful because those brothers will try to provoke him over absolutely anything. Luca knew exactly why they watched him. Serving his own plate, he remembered the crucial advice well. He quietly began cutting his meat in complete silence. Looking up, he noticed Himalayas had not touched his food. The stern patriarch finally lifted his fork, declaring he must surpass his own father's massive legacy. Meanwhile, the daughter, Eva, ate in absolute silence. She said nothing. She was constantly judged under the watchful eyes of the maids. Luca took a bite, he chewed with heavy focus. With a sharp grin, Joel broke the quiet, calling Luca's name. Luca stopped eating, turning his direct gaze to meet Joel's eyes. Joel sighed, claiming he hated bringing up business during their first dinner. He openly attacked the boy's total lack of etiquette, questioning how anyone could grow up without knowing the absolute basics. While the insults flew, Luca silently analyzed his brother's behavior. Nicholas, the silent eldest brother, was also under his close watch. Nicholas was dangerous. He was the only threat to watch out for. Joel kept asking if a soldier with no medals in 10 years deserved their name. This blatant provocation left a tense, suffocating silence hanging over them. Luca scanned the table, weighing the famous family's legacy. Leaning forward, he stared directly into Joel's eyes. Luca challenged his brother to test actual combat skills on the battlefield. Forget table manners, let's see how you handle real steel. Joel flinched in surprise, his hand tightening hard around his dinner knife. Before things turned bloody, Himalas roared, ordering them both to stop. The second son quickly backpedaled, claiming it was just an example. Himalas saw right through it, shutting him down instantly. The father asked if Joel was blind to Luca's flawless manners. Clearly, Luca was only pretending, and Himalas demanded the truth. Luca didn't answer, he simply chewed another piece of meat. After finishing his bite, he flashed a calm, completely unbothered smile. Answering smoothly, he claimed he had simply made a small mistake. He admitted that being in such a grand place made him anxious. That blatant lie made Joel's eye twitch in fury. Nicholas chimed in, bringing up the prestigious 7th rank crossed sword medal. Nicholas admitted his regret over never serving in the army himself. Still, he was glad their father found someone as talented as Luca. Joel took that as a direct shot at his own lack of service. The second son snapped, asking Nicholas if he was calling him useless. Nicholas smiled warmly, assuring Joel that he would achieve great things soon. Luca saw his chance. He slid smoothly into the bickering. He mentioned feeling the exact same pressure back on the field. Commanders actually kept him off the front lines because of his father. Everyone was too terrified of the patriarch's massive name. The table grew freezing cold as the brothers glared at each other. Old wounds were ripped wide open, but Luca just watched. Lucas felt absolutely certain this exact scene was what Himalas had expected from him, as his. Father Lucas knew behind that serious face the commander was genuinely satisfied. When Ava stepped in, the clash quickly ended, paving the way for a peaceful, quiet banquet. During the grand banquet, Ava formally introduced Lucas to all the guests as their newest family. Member Lucas Castoria. After that, people stepped forward to talk. Fully aware he was no easy target after that incredibly intense and heated discussion with Joel after reviewing some key files with Giselle, Lucas's first day finally ended. Once back in his quiet, empty bedroom, a sudden instinct put him on high alert. Soon, a dark silhouette slowly materialized right at his door. Walking closer, Himalas asked if Lucas was still awake. The old veteran warmly apologized for the incredibly late hour, but strictly warned Lucas that he must stay neutral within this complicated family. As Himalas spoke, the patriarch sat down in a nearby armchair, holding a glass. Lucas looked at him deeply. Surprised, he knew alcohol directly ruined combat reflexes. Himalas offered the drink, but the young man immediately declined, saying that learning Archi's Victima was already plenty. Finally, the veteran commander offered critical advice, explaining that any soldier always needed some vices to survive in such a brutal place. Right then, Lucas questioned the commander about humanity's fate, since Himalas called it the key to opening their box. A cold sweat slowly dripped down Lucas's face as he suddenly recalled that those with that mindset were always the first devoured by the Legion. Suggesting Himalas was drunk, Lucas was told to consider the advice. As a gift for officially joining the family, as he stood up, the patriarch reminded Lucas that this place was not an active battlefield, so he should definitely find a hobby. Soon, Himalis placed a firm hand on his shoulder. With that advice delivered, the commander turned and quietly left him alone. Left entirely alone, Lucas wondered how he could chase vices when just focusing on self-improvement. Took all his energy. He wondered if Himalis really wanted him like Kenuen. Knowing human emotions easily cause such dangerous irregularities. Standing up, Lucas wondered how the head of the Centurions could say such things. The bizarre visit, with its talk of imperfections, showed a completely new side of the patriarch. Lucas dismissed it as nonsense, a strange attempt at acting fatherly. On his very second day at the Castoria mansion, Lucas joined Giselle for a grand of the estate while staying focused on his own secret plans. Tour of the property. Soon, Giselle stopped before a heavy door, activating the panel announcing their arrival. As it slid open, look at that shine, bright light. Hit Lucas's face. A colossal, endless armory was revealed, occupying an entire building. Lucas asked if Giselle was the one managing it. And she smiled, mentioning her studies in engineering. She then explained that caring for these weapons was a long-standing tradition among the family women, with her mother leading in Giselle designated as the next official successor. As they walked, Lucas teased that she didn't look like the type to like Greece, but she quickly corrected him. Lucas listened in silence as Giselle proudly reaffirmed this old family legacy. She added that this armory showed the true power of the Castoria family. When Giselle called out to Luca, he was already standing further ahead, observing something under a bright beam of light, completely locked onto an imposing combat robot standing tall in the room. As Luca approached, he noticed that the machine's steel body bore traces of past repairs. Soon after, Luca realized that the right arm was much larger than the left, likely modified to carry some special weapon. Giselle then approached and asked if that was what had caught his eye, revealing it was actually the legendary Scylla armor.